Have you ever passed someone on a dark street and realized they once knew your heart? Have you ever walked away from love only to see what it cost years later? This story begins on a freezing Chicago night, where a mother's breath turned to smoke and a man's silence finally met its echo. The park was nearly empty. Wind scraped through the bare trees, carrying the chill of December. Under a flickering lamp, Leah sat on an old bench, holding her twins close. The blanket covering them was thin, damp at the edges. She whispered soft words, lies she wished were true. "Mummy, are we going home soon?" Leah smiled weakly. "Soon, baby. We'll rest a bit first." But there was no home. Not anymore. 3 years earlier, Leah had everything a woman could dream of. A husband who said she made him better, a home full of laughter, plans for the future. And then, one decision ended it all. Evan Holt, the man who once swore he'd never let her go, had chosen silence when his family demanded he do exactly that. His mother said Leah was too simple, too ordinary for a Holt, and Evan said nothing. That silence became the sound of her heartbreak. Now, under the biting wind, Leah pressed her lips to her children's heads and prayed morning would come quickly. She had learned to survive on little food, little warmth, little hope. But tonight was colder than most, and the way her son's cough rattled in his chest told her she couldn't last much longer like this. Across the city, glass walls reflected golden light. Inside a rooftop restaurant, Evan Holt sat at a long table surrounded by people who called him a success. He smiled when expected, nodded at deals, raised glasses to empty victories. On paper, he was perfect. In truth, he was hollow. He told himself he'd moved on, that Leah had been a chapter, beautiful, yes, but finished. Yet, each time the night went quiet, he'd hear her laugh. Soft, real, unpolished. The kind that used to make expensive rooms feel human. He told himself he left for ambition. But deep down, he knew the truth. He left because it was easier to obey than to fight for love. When the meeting ended, he loosened his tie and told his driver to take the long way home. The rain had started again, slow, steady drops tapping against the car windows. Evan stared at the skyline, trying not to think about the one person he hadn't stopped thinking about. Then fate, or guilt, decided to intervene. At a red light near Lincoln Park, he saw movement through the fogged glass. A woman, hunched over 2 small children on a bench, trying to shield them from the cold. Her face hidden beneath the hood. But something in the way she bent over them, that quiet strength, hit him like a blow. "Stop the car," he said. "Sir?" The driver asked. "I said stop." The tires splashed against the curb. Evan stepped out, the wind cutting straight through his suit. He didn't feel it. He walked closer. Each step brought more certainty and more fear. "Leah?" She looked up, slowly. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Even through exhaustion, she held her pride. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the rain dared to fill the silence between them. "Evan," she said finally. Her voice was soft but steady. "You shouldn't be here." He took in the sight, the children tucked under her arms, the faint tremble in her hands. He couldn't breathe. "Are they—" His words faded. She rose, putting herself between him and the twins. "Don't ask questions you ignored years ago." That single line hit harder than the wind. Every excuse he'd ever made dissolved right there on that sidewalk. The youngest child coughed again. Leah instinctively pulled the blanket tighter around them. Without thinking, Evan removed his coat and draped it over them. Leah tried to protest, but her voice broke. "Don't pity us." "It's not pity," he said, his tone low, cracked. "It's regret." She froze at the word. Regret. The one thing he'd never admitted before. When the twins started shivering harder, Leah's resistance wavered. "Please," Evan whispered. "Come with me. Let me help." She looked at him, really looked, the man she once loved, the father her children didn't know. Then she nodded once. For tonight, the car ride was silent, except for the hum of the heater. Leah kept her gaze on the city lights, remembering how they used to dance from their old apartment window, back when his arms were her comfort, not her memory. When they arrived, Evan led them into the elevator. The twins' eyes widened at the mirrored walls. Leah's reflection looked foreign to her, tired eyes, damp hair, a mother who had fought too many nights alone. The elevator doors opened to glass, marble, and silence. His penthouse was pristine, lifeless, like success without soul. Leah stood still, her children clinging to her coat. "I'll get them warm clothes," Evan said quietly, unsure of what else to do. Leah only nodded. When he returned with blankets and soft shirts that smelled faintly of cedar and money, she helped the twins change. They curled up on the couch and fell asleep instantly, safe for the first time in months. For a while, Evan stood by the window, staring out at the city, the same one she had been lost in for years. Then, softly, Leah spoke. "Why now, Evan? After all this time?" He turned. "Because I didn't know. I didn't know you had them." Her laugh was tired, bitter. "If you had known, you'd still have left. Your mother made sure of that." He swallowed hard. "She doesn't control me anymore." Leah looked at him, her eyes calm but distant. "Too late to prove that. Before we continue, my friend, take a moment. What would you do if the person who broke you suddenly came back, asking for a chance to fix it? Stay with me through this story, because what happens next will remind you that sometimes forgiveness isn't given, it's earned. Now, let's go deeper into their night." The night grew quieter, but sleep never came to Evan. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Leah's face, tired, cold, and far too calm for what she'd been through. From the guest room, he could hear the soft breaths of the twins, small reminders of the life he'd walked away from. He sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. The penthouse was silent except for the sound of the city outside, horns, sirens, life. He'd spent years surrounded by people, yet he'd never felt this alone. He got up and walked toward the living room. Leah was standing by the wide window, the skyline reflected in her eyes. The glow from the streetlights made her look like she didn't belong to this world anymore. She looked like she'd been fighting too long, like peace was a language she'd forgotten how to speak. "Leah," he said softly. She turned, startled for a moment. "You should be asleep. Don't you have meetings tomorrow?" He shook his head. "They can wait." Her eyes drifted back to the glass. "That's new. You never missed a meeting before." He wanted to tell her that everything had changed, that nothing about those meetings mattered now. But the words didn't come out right. "I needed to make sure you were okay." "I've been okay," she said, though her voice betrayed her. "You call this okay?" he asked, glancing toward the couch where the twins slept, curled up under his coat. Leah's jaw tightened. "Don't talk like you care now. You had years to care." He stepped closer. "I deserve that. But I'm here now. I want to help." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. "Help? Like before, when I begged you to stand up for me, when your mother said I was an embarrassment and you just sat there." He swallowed the guilt that rose in his throat. "I was wrong." She turned back to him. "You were a coward." He didn't argue. He couldn't. "You're right." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For a second, she looked unsure, like part of her had been waiting years to hear that. "I let people make decisions for me," he continued quietly. "I thought success meant never disappointing anyone. But all I did was disappoint the one person who mattered most." Leah crossed her arms. "You're only saying that because you feel guilty. That doesn't change what happened." "I'm not asking you to forget," he said. "I just want to make things right." Her gaze softened, but only slightly. "You can't fix this with apologies. You can't buy forgiveness." "I'm not trying to," he whispered. "I'm trying to earn it." Silence filled the room again. She turned back to the window, her reflection flickering beside his. "You know what the hardest part was?" she asked. "It wasn't the nights I couldn't pay rent. It wasn't hiding my pregnancy from the world. It was knowing you were out there, living, laughing, breathing, and not once wondering if I was alive. He looked down, the shame too heavy to carry. I thought about you every day. Then why didn't you come? Because I was too proud to face what I'd done, he admitted, and too afraid you'd hate me. I did, she said softly. But hate fades. It turns into something else, something quieter. Disappointment, maybe. Evan stepped closer, his voice lower. Then, let me start from there. Leah didn't move. The twins stirred on the couch, shifting under the blanket. Her body tensed like every sound meant danger. He noticed the way she never relaxed, even in safety. She'd learned to live on edge. He took a breath. They're beautiful, he said quietly. Her eyes flicked toward the children. They're mine. He nodded. And mine too, whether you want to admit it or not. She didn't respond, but she didn't deny it either. He lowered his tone. Do they know who I am? No, she said. They only know their father was busy. The words hit him harder than he expected. Busy. That's what he'd been. Too busy building an empire to build a life. You didn't tell them? I didn't want them to grow up hating you. He exhaled slowly, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the sleeping twins. Thank you, he said, for protecting them from me. Leah looked at him, the first trace of something human softening her face. Don't thank me. Thank them. They're the only reason I kept going. Evan nodded, the ache in his chest sharp and real. I'll make it right, Leah. Somehow. She sighed, tired. Go to bed, Evan. You can't fix the past in one night. I know, he said, but I can start tonight. He took a step back toward the hallway, but stopped when he heard her whisper, almost too quiet to catch. You didn't just lose me, Evan. You lost 3 of us. He turned slightly, his voice rough. Then let me find you again. She didn't answer. She only turned back to the window, eyes on the city that had taken everything from her. The rain outside had stopped, but inside, everything still felt heavy. As he walked away, Evan glanced once more at the twins. Their small hands rested over each other, peaceful for the first time in too long. He went back to his room and sat in the dark until dawn. The sound of their breathing carried through the walls, reminding him of what he'd thrown away and what he might never deserve again. But for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about meetings, profits, or power. He was thinking about second chances, and the woman in the next room who still held the pieces of his heart. When the first light broke through the windows, Evan stood and walked to the kitchen. He made coffee, not for himself, but for her. He didn't know if she'd accept it. He didn't know if she'd ever forgive him. But he knew one thing. He wasn't walking away again. Morning light crept through the wide glass windows, settling on the penthouse floor like it didn't belong there. Leah blinked awake, her head heavy, her body sore from the park bench the night before. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The couch was soft, the air warm, the twins asleep on either side of her, their small hands still clinging to her coat. Then the scent of coffee drifted through the air. She turned her head. Evan stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, 2 mugs on the counter, his back to her. The quiet rhythm of the morning was strange. No shouting, no phones ringing, no footsteps rushing for power. Only him, steady, almost uncertain. Leah sat up slowly, pulling the blanket higher over the children. You don't have to do that, she said, her voice hoarse. He looked over his shoulder. It's just coffee. That's not what I meant. He nodded once, as if he understood more than she'd said. There's breakfast too. They'll need something warm when they wake. She hesitated, then looked at the food. Eggs, toast, strawberries sliced neatly on a plate. The last time she'd eaten strawberries, she'd been pregnant. He'd brought them home because she craved them in the middle of the night. Now she wasn't sure if it was memory or cruelty that he remembered. You didn't have to go through the trouble, she said again. I wanted to. Leah turned her eyes to the window. The city glowed gold in the morning light. Everything looked peaceful, but her chest felt tight. It was easier to face hunger than to face kindness from the man who'd once left her behind. One of the twins stirred. A small voice called, Mummy. Leah bent down quickly. I'm here, baby. The boy blinked at the room around him. "Where are we?" "Somewhere warm," she said softly. The girl woke next, rubbing her eyes. She spotted Evan near the counter and tilted her head. "Who's that?" Leah froze. The question she'd been dreading had arrived sooner than she expected. Before she could answer, Evan spoke gently. "Good morning. I'm a friend." The twins looked at each other, then at Leah for approval. She gave a small nod, and they relaxed. The boy smiled shyly. "You have a big house." Evan knelt beside the couch, careful not to come too close. "It feels big when you're alone," he said. The words came out quieter than he meant. Leah caught them, her eyes flickering with something unreadable. The twins noticed the plates on the table. "Is that for us?" the little girl asked. "Yes," Leah said quickly. "Say thank you." "Thank you," they said in unison. Evan smiled. "You're welcome." As they ate, Leah sat watching, still unsure if she'd made the right choice last night. Evan kept his distance, letting her lead. Every gesture was careful, refilling their glasses, handing her a napkin, staying on. The other side of the room, as though he was afraid of breaking something fragile. After breakfast, the twins ran to the large windows. "Mummy, look! We can see the clouds." Leah smiled faintly. "Don't press your faces too close." Evan watched her from across the room. The softness in her voice, when she spoke to the children, reminded him of the nights she'd hum quietly while folding laundry in their old apartment. Simple moments he'd once been too blind to appreciate. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice low. Leah didn't turn. "They're strong. That's what matters. They remind me of you." Her hands stilled on the table. "Don't say things like that." "Why?" "Because I don't believe you," she said flatly. "Not anymore." He took a slow breath. "Then let me show you." She looked at him for a moment, tired, wary, but listening. "You think a few kind gestures erase years of silence?" "No," he said, "but I'm trying to speak now." The conversation ended when the twins ran over, full of excitement. "Mummy, can we go outside? We want to see the park again." Leah hesitated. "It's cold." Evan stepped in. "I'll drive you there. They deserve a real morning." She glanced at him. "You don't have to do that. I want to. Please." Her eyes softened slightly. "Fine. Just for a while." In the car, the twins pressed their faces against the windows, watching the city move past. Leah sat beside them, her coat zipped, her expression unreadable. Evan drove quietly, every glance at the rearview mirror pulling at the pieces of his heart he'd buried. When they arrived, the park was nearly empty. Snowflakes fell slowly, landing on the twins' hair as they ran toward the swings. Their laughter filled the space between the three adults, laughter that made Evan's throat tighten. He watched them chase each other through the frosty grass. "They're incredible." Leah folded her arms. "They had to be. You did this alone," he said softly. "I don't know how." She shrugged. "I didn't have a choice." He nodded. "You shouldn't have had to." For a moment she looked at him, really looked. The man she'd once loved was still there beneath the polished exterior, the controlled tone, the expensive coat. But he was different now. There was something raw in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. Remorse, maybe even fear. One of the twins tripped on the edge of the path and fell. Before Leah could move, Evan was already there, kneeling in the snow. Hey, you're okay," he said gently, brushing the boy's sleeve. The child blinked up at him, eyes wide. "You're strong, like Mommy said." Evan froze. Then he smiled, small and broken. "Your mom's the strongest person I know." Leah stood behind them, silent, watching. She didn't move closer, but her walls lowered, if only for a second. The sound of her children's laughter and the sight of Evan kneeling in the snow created an ache she couldn't name. When they returned to the car, the twins fell asleep almost immediately. Leah turned her face to the window, pretending not to notice the way Evan's eyes lingered on her reflection. At a red light, he said quietly, "Leah, I can't change what happened, but I want to make sure you never have to live through something like that again." She didn't respond right away. The city lights blurred outside, soft and distant. "You're saying the right things," she whispered. "But words are easy, Evan. You've always been good at those." He didn't argue. He simply nodded, letting her have the last word. When they pulled up to the building, Leah lifted the twins gently and carried them inside. Evan followed, not saying anything more. The quiet between them was heavy, but not hostile. It was something else, something almost human. That night, after the children were tucked in, Leah stood at the window again. The city stretched below her, endless and cold. But this time, there was warmth behind her. Coffee cups on the table, a blanket on the couch, breathing she could hear that wasn't her own. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start. The city quieted as night fell again. The twins were asleep in the guest room, their steady breathing filling the silence that lingered through the penthouse. Leah sat at the dining table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Across the room, Evan stood near the window, the lights from the skyline flickering against his face. Neither spoke at first. There was too much history between them and too little trust. Finally, Leah broke the silence. "You know what's strange?" she said softly. "The first night we moved into our old apartment, I thought we were poor. The walls were thin, the heater didn't work right, and the streetlights outside flickered just like the ones near that park bench. But I was happy, because you were there." He turned slowly. "And then I wasn't." She nodded, eyes on the cup. "You left before the sun came up that morning. You didn't even look back." "I remember," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I told myself it was the right thing. That you'd be better without me." "Better?" Her laugh was quiet, sharp. "I slept on floors while carrying your children. I washed office floors at night, Evan. I counted coins for baby formula. You think that was better?" He closed his eyes for a moment, then walked over and sat across from her. "I didn't know. I didn't even let myself ask. I told myself you moved on, that you didn't need me. You didn't want to know," she said. He didn't argue. "You're right." For a long moment, she studied him. He looked older now, not in years, but in weight. His face carried guilt where pride used to sit. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally. "You could have just driven away last night, pretended you never saw us." He leaned forward. "Because I can't unsee it. I can't unsee you holding them in the cold. I can't keep living like I didn't destroy something that mattered." Leah's voice softened. "You didn't just destroy something, you destroyed someone. Me." Evan nodded, his eyes wet. "I know." Her guard faltered for the first time. She wasn't ready to forgive, but something in his voice, something raw and unguarded, made her stop fighting for a second. She took a sip of tea, her fingers trembling slightly. "When the twins were born, I told myself I wouldn't raise them to hate you. I said, if you ever came back, I wanted them to see you as a person, not a mistake." He swallowed hard. "You protected me when I didn't deserve it. I protected them from what you became," she said. "That's all." He looked down at his hands. "I can't erase it, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to make sure you never feel that pain again." She set her cup down. "Don't make promises, Evan. You were good at those once." "I mean this one," he said quietly. "You have no reason to believe me, but I mean it." She sighed and leaned back in her chair. "You know what hurt the most? It wasn't losing you. It was realizing that all those words, every I love you, every forever, they didn't mean anything when it mattered." He looked at her, his voice low. "They meant everything to me. I was just too weak to fight for them." Leah's eyes met his, steady but tired. "Then maybe weakness was your real love story." He didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Only the faint hum of the heater and the distant sound of cars below. After a long silence, Leah stood. "I'll put the twins to bed," she said. Evan stood too. "Leah." She stopped in the doorway. "Don't try to say the right thing. Just be quiet for once. Let your actions speak." She walked away, her shadow trailing down the hall. Evan stayed at the table, her words circling in his head. Let your actions speak. He thought about all the things he'd said in his life, the speeches, the board meetings, the hollow apologies. None of them had ever mattered like this. He rose, went to the coat closet, and pulled out a blanket. The living room still carried the faint chill of winter air. He laid the blanket across the couch, tucked it neatly around the edges, and turned off the lights before heading to his room. Leah came back a few minutes later, her step soft, her expression unreadable. She saw the blanket on the couch, and the lights turned low. For a moment, she just stood there. She didn't smile, but she also didn't scowl. Instead, she whispered to the quiet room, "We'll see." That night, Evan didn't sleep much. He kept hearing her words. "We'll see." It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't the end either. He stared out the window until dawn, the first light touching the skyline. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man trying to become worthy of the woman he'd broken. And as the city woke below, he promised himself that this time he wouldn't fail. Before we move on, take a breath. Have you ever met someone who tried to make things right after years of silence? Do you think people truly change, or do they only remember when it's too late? If this story has stirred something in you, take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more powerful tales about love, regret, and redemption. Now, let's see what happens when morning comes. The first light of morning poured through the windows, cutting across the penthouse floor. Leah stirred on the couch, the faint smell of coffee drifting through the air again. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, until the sight of her twins sleeping beside her reminded her where she was. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake them. For a moment, she let herself breathe. The warmth of the room was something she hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Yet, even warmth could feel dangerous when it came from a man who'd once turned cold. From the kitchen came the faint sound of movement. Evan was already up. He stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up again, his hair slightly messy. For the first time, he didn't look like a CEO. He looked like someone trying. Leah hesitated at the edge of the couch. "You're up early," she said quietly. He turned, surprised she was awake. "Couldn't sleep much." "Neither could I," she admitted. He nodded, pouring a cup of coffee and setting it on the counter. "You can have this. It's not as strong as yesterday." "Still the same blend?" she asked. He blinked. "You remember that?" Leah gave a small, humorless smile. When you spend nights alone, you remember details, even ones you wish you could forget. Evan leaned against the counter. "Then maybe remembering means we still have something to hold on to." She shook her head. "Or it means we never really healed." The twins woke soon after, their giggles breaking the tension. Leah went to them immediately, helping them wash up, brushing their hair, making sure they looked decent. Her movements were natural, automatic, filled with a mother's rhythm. Evan stood in the doorway, watching quietly. "You're incredible with them," he said. She didn't look up. "I've had 5 years of practice." He wanted to tell her he'd missed all of it. The first steps, the birthdays, the scraped knees. But guilt pressed against his throat, choking the words before they came out. Instead, he went to the table and set out plates of pancakes, fruit, and juice. The twins climbed onto the chairs, eyes wide. "You made this?" the boy asked. Evan nodded. "I did my best." The girl grinned. "It looks better than Mommy's toast." Leah shot her daughter a look, and the child giggled. "Don't tease me, Maya." Evan smiled softly at the exchange. It was the first time he'd heard Leah laugh, even just a little. As they ate, he noticed small things. The way Leah cut the twins' food before her own. The way she always sat on the edge of her chair as if ready to leave at any second. She still didn't feel safe. After breakfast, the twins ran off to explore the hallway, chasing each other's laughter. The sound filled the empty penthouse in a way it hadn't been filled in years. Leah took a sip of her coffee and finally looked at him. "What happens now, Evan?" He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You found us, gave us shelter. But what happens after that? Do you expect us to stay here forever?" He paused. "I don't expect anything. I just want you and the kids to have what you deserve. A roof, food, warmth, whatever you need." Leah's eyes softened, but only for a second. You can't fix everything with comfort. You already tried that once. He nodded. I'm not trying to fix it. I'm trying to be present. Her gaze lingered on him. Present doesn't erase the past. I know. But maybe it can rewrite the future. She sighed, standing to clear the table. You always did know what to say. He stood too. No, Leah. I knew how to talk. I never knew how to listen. That stopped her. She turned slowly, studying his face. Then listen now. He waited. She put the plates down and folded her arms. Do you know what it's like to carry someone's child alone? To wake up every morning wondering if you'll have enough to feed them? To feel invisible because the man who promised to love you pretends you don't exist? Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. I walked into job interviews pregnant, Evan. People smiled politely, then told me they'd call. They never did. I worked nights cleaning offices. Some nights I slept in the back room of a diner because it was warmer than my apartment. Evan's hands tightened at his sides. Leah, don't interrupt, she said firmly. You wanted to listen, so listen. He nodded, silent. When the twins were born, I didn't even have enough for the hospital bill. My parents helped what little they could, but I didn't tell them the truth about you. I said you were away on business. I lied because I didn't want them to see what I'd become. The woman a man threw away. Her voice broke for the first time. You weren't there for their first cry. You weren't there when our son got sick and I spent 2 nights in the ER. You weren't there when I almost lost everything. But every single time, I told myself I'd be okay, that I didn't need you. Evan's throat burned. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty, she said quietly. I'm saying this because I need you to understand what silence costs. When you left, I didn't just lose a husband. I lost the only person I thought would stand by me. He swallowed hard. I understand now. I swear I do. No, she said, shaking her head. You're starting to understand. There's a difference. They stood there in silence. The tension was heavy, but not cruel. It felt like a truth that had waited too long to be spoken. Finally, Evan said, I can't change what I did, but I can make sure you never face a day like that again. Leah's eyes met his. You can't promise that, Evan. People change their minds. You did. I didn't change my mind, he said. I lost my courage. That admission made her look at him differently, not softer, but with recognition. And now you've found it. I'm trying, he said simply. For them. For you. A small sound came from the hallway. The twins had returned, holding something shiny. Mommy. Look, Maya said, holding up a small metal toy car. It was under the couch. Leah smiled faintly. Maybe it belonged to someone before. Evan's expression shifted. No, he said quietly. That was mine. From when I was a kid. My dad gave it to me. Leah looked at the toy, then at him. You kept it? He nodded. He told me that when I had a family of my own, I should give it to my son. I forgot about it until now. The boy's small hand reached out. Can I keep it? Evan smiled through the ache in his chest. You already have. Leah watched the exchange silently. Something in her chest twisted, a feeling she didn't want to name. Later that day, when the twins napped again, she stood by the same window she'd stared out of the night before. The skyline looked different now, not because it had changed, but because she had. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was thinking about what came next. Evan joined her quietly. You used to love this view, he said. I used to love a lot of things, she replied softly. Do you still paint? He asked. Her eyes widened. You remember that? He nodded. You'd sit for hours painting city lights. You said they looked like hope. She gave a small, sad smile. I stopped when hope stopped making sense. Evan's voice softened. Then start again. For you. For them. For what's left. She turned to him. You think it's that easy? No, he said. But I think you're strong enough to try. The silence between them wasn't as heavy this time. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't resentment either. It was something fragile, the beginning of peace. Leah glanced at him one last time before turning toward the hallway. They'll wake up soon. I should get their things ready. He nodded, watching her walk away, every step a reminder of what he'd almost lost forever. When she was gone, he stood by the window, the reflection of his own face faint against the skyline. He didn't see the CEO the world admired. He saw a man learning to be human again, and for the first time in years, that was enough. The afternoon sun poured softly through the tall glass windows, spreading a golden hue across the living room. Leah sat on the couch, quietly folding the twins' freshly washed clothes. The sound of running water came from the kitchen where Evan was rinsing. Dishes, his sleeves rolled up, his movements quiet and careful. The domestic stillness felt foreign to her. For years, silence had meant loneliness. Now, it carried something else, a presence. The twins sat on the rug, their laughter filling the room as they built a small tower of wooden blocks that Evan had ordered earlier that morning. Their joy was simple, pure, untouched by the history that stood between their parents. Leah looked up when she heard Evan laugh softly. He knelt beside the twins, helping them balance the top block. "You've got to be patient," he said gently. "See? Like that?" The boy grinned. "You're good at this." Evan smiled. "I'm learning." Leah folded another shirt, pretending not to watch, but her eyes betrayed her. Every time Evan smiled at the twins, something deep inside her softened, then quickly hardened again. When the tower finally toppled, both kids burst into laughter. Evan laughed too, genuine and unguarded. Leah hadn't seen that smile since before his mother poisoned their peace. He looked up at her. "You used to say laughter fixes everything," he said. She gave a faint smile. "I used to believe a lot of things." He stood, walking toward her, hands in his pockets. "Do you still believe in people?" "I believe in actions," she replied. "Words fade. Promises fade. People forget what they swore they'd never do." Evan nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time I show you who I've become." He didn't wait for her to respond. Instead, he went to the corner of the room, opened a storage cabinet, and pulled out a box she hadn't noticed before. Inside were old photos, his parents, business events, newspaper clippings. But beneath those were two worn items, a faded sketchbook and a folded piece of paper with her handwriting. Leah's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" "I kept them," he said quietly. "You left them behind when you moved out. I couldn't throw them away." She reached for the sketchbook, running her fingers over the cover. "I thought these were gone. I couldn't look at them for years," he said. "Every drawing felt like a confession of what I'd lost." She opened the pages. Each sketch was of simple things, city streets, cafes, faces she'd drawn from memory. And one page in the middle made her freeze. It was of him. "You drew this after I left, didn't you?" he asked. Her voice was soft. "I was angry. Drawing you helped me hate you less." He looked down. "I didn't deserve that kind of mercy." She closed the book gently. "No, you didn't." For a moment, the air between them shifted. Pain and nostalgia tangled in the same breath. "Leah," he said quietly, "I've done everything wrong in this life except one thing, loving you." That part was always real. She met his eyes, firm but calm. "Love without courage isn't love, Evan. It's comfort." Her words hit deep. He nodded slowly, accepting them. "Then I'll learn to be brave." She didn't answer. She went back to folding clothes, though her hands trembled slightly. He joined her on the couch, keeping a respectful distance. They folded in silence for a few minutes, the simple rhythm of it strangely peaceful. The twins continued playing on the floor, their laughter echoing like a small reminder of hope. When Leah finished, she leaned back, tired but calm. "They've never had a real home," she said quietly. "We've moved 4 times in 5 years. Every time, I told them it was temporary." Evan looked at her. "You have one now." She shook her head. "A home isn't walls and lights, Evan. It's trust, it's peace. It's knowing the person beside you won't change their mind overnight." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Then let me earn that. Let me build that with you." Her voice dropped. "And what if I can't trust you again? Then I'll stay until you can—" The twins called from the rug, saving her from answering. "Mommy, look what we made." They had built the tower again, taller this time, steadier. Leah smiled faintly. "You did that all by yourselves?" The boy grinned proudly. "He helped," he said, pointing to Evan. "But we didn't let him touch it this time." Evan laughed, the sound warm. "Smart move." "I'd probably mess it up." Leah's laughter followed softly. It surprised both of them. Evan looked at her for a moment longer than he should have. Her smile was tired but real, and it made something in him ache, the kind of ache that comes when you finally realize what you've taken for granted. As evening approached, Leah tucked the twins into bed. Evan stood in the hallway, watching her quietly. She brushed the children's hair back and kissed their foreheads. The tenderness in her touch, the patience in her voice, it humbled him more than any loss ever had. When she turned and saw him standing there, she froze for a moment. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I just wanted to say good night." "They don't know who you are," she reminded him. "Not yet," he said. "But when they're ready, they will." Leah walked past him, closing the door halfway. They both stood in the dim light of the hallway, the sound of the twins' soft breathing carrying through the crack in the door. "You've changed," she said quietly. "I'm trying to," he replied. "Why now?" "Because last night, I saw what I'd done. And I don't want my children to grow up thinking their father was a stranger who watched from a distance." Her eyes glistened. "You still call them yours?" He nodded. "Because they are, and because I'll spend every day proving I deserve to say that." Leah didn't speak. She turned to the living room, her voice low. "You can stay here for now, but don't mistake that for forgiveness." "I won't," he said. "I'll take it as hope." She paused halfway down the hall, then said without looking back, "Hope isn't something you take, Evan. It's something you earn." He stood there long after she disappeared into the guest room. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a beginning. Later, as he walked past the couch, his eyes caught the small wooden tower still standing on the rug. It wasn't perfect, but it was balanced, built with patience and care. He smiled to himself. Maybe that's what rebuilding love looked like. Not grand gestures, not promises, but small, steady things that stayed standing when everything else fell apart. He turned off the lights and whispered into the dark, "Tomorrow, I'll try again." And for the first time in years, Evan Holt slept with purpose. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass walls again, warm but sharp. Leah was in the kitchen, helping the twins with breakfast, while Evan stood in the hallway, adjusting his cufflinks. For the first time in years, he wasn't preparing for a board meeting, he was preparing for something harder. He had made a decision during the night. He would face his mother. She was the reason Leah had left crying that night, clutching her belly, too proud to ask for help. And he had let it happen. He'd stood there while his mother's voice cut Leah to pieces. "Money doesn't hide shame, Evan," his mother had said back then. "If you marry beneath you, you drag the family down with you." And instead of defending Leah, he'd gone silent. That silence was still echoing inside him. Now, watching Leah pour milk into the twins' bowls, her hair loose and soft. Around her shoulders, he realized the only way forward was through truth. He grabbed his coat from the rack. Leah noticed. "You're going out?" He nodded. "I have something to take care of." Her tone was cool. "Business?" He hesitated. "Family." Leah's eyes lifted. "Your mother?" He nodded again. She said nothing for a moment, then looked down at the twins. "Be careful what you say, Evan. Some wounds don't need reopening." He met her gaze. "This one does." He left before she could respond. The drive to his parents' estate was long and quiet. His family home sat on the edge of Lake Michigan, all white marble and arrogance. Nothing had changed. Even the iron gate groaned the same way it used to when he was a boy. His mother, Margaret Holt, was on the patio, wrapped in a silk robe, sipping tea like the world still belonged to her. Her hair was silver now, but her posture remained unyielding. When she saw him, her brows lifted. "You didn't call." That's unusual. I didn't come for pleasantries, he said. She gestured toward a chair. Then sit. I assume this is about your company's upcoming charity event? No, he said. It's about Leah. The name hung in the air like a storm cloud. His mother's hand paused mid-air, the cup trembling slightly before she set it down. Don't bring that woman into my house. Evan stood firm. She's not just a woman, Mother. She's the mother of my children. Her eyes narrowed. Children? Yes, twins. She blinked, the composure cracking for a second. You mean to tell me you fathered children with her, and didn't tell me? I didn't know until recently, he said. But they're mine, and they deserve a father. She shook her head. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the fact that she doesn't belong in our world. She never did. Evan clenched his fists. She didn't need to belong. I was supposed to protect her. You made me choose between family and love, and I chose wrong. Her tone sharpened. You chose right, Evan. That girl would have dragged you down. Look what she's done, living like a beggar with your children on a park bench. His voice rose. Because of me, because I let you convince me she wasn't enough. Margaret stood, offended by the tone. Watch yourself. No, he said, his voice steady. For once, you listen. You taught me that money defines worth, that pride is power, and I believed you, I followed you, but pride doesn't build a home, Mother. It breaks one. Her lips tightened. You're emotional. I'm human, he said. Something I forgot to be when I left her. Margaret turned away. So what now? You think bringing her back will fix your conscience? Evan's jaw clenched. No, I'm not looking for your approval. I came to tell you that from now on, Leah and the twins are my family. If you can't respect that, I'll stop coming here. For the first time, his mother looked shaken. You'd walk away from me? I already did once, he said quietly. But this time, I'm doing it for the right reason. There was a long silence. Then, softly, she said, You've changed. He nodded. You raised me to be strong. You just never told me strength meant admitting when I was wrong. He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. Evan. He paused at the doorway. Does she know you're here? Yes. And what does she want from you now? He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Nothing. That's why she deserves everything. He walked out without waiting for a reply. The ride back felt lighter somehow, as if each mile peeled away another layer of guilt. For the first time, he didn't feel like a boy seeking approval. He felt like a man standing for something that mattered. When he arrived at the penthouse, Leah was sitting by the window, sketchbook open in her lap. The twins were napping again, their toys scattered around the rug. She looked up when he entered. You went, she said simply. I did. Her eyes searched his face. How did it go? He took off his coat. It wasn't pleasant, but it was honest. That's a first, she said, her tone dry but not cruel. He smiled faintly. I told her everything, about the twins, about you, about how wrong I was. Leah's fingers paused over the page. And she said what she always says, that you don't belong. Leah looked down, unsurprised. Then nothing's changed. He stepped closer. I changed. That's enough for now. Her eyes lifted to his, cautious but curious. You stood up to her? Yes, and it felt like breathing again after years underwater. Leah closed the sketchbook slowly. Why now, Evan? Why not years ago, when I was still waiting for you to fight for me? His voice was steady. Because back then, I wanted to be perfect. Now I just want to be real. She studied him for a long moment. Something in his eyes was different, clearer, less afraid. The man who once hid behind silence now spoke with purpose. You look different, she said quietly. Maybe it's the guilt, he said with a faint smile. Or maybe it's finally doing the right thing. Leah sighed and stood, walking past him toward the kitchen. Don't expect me to thank you. I'm not asking for thanks, he said. Just a chance to show you that this isn't another phase of regret. She stopped by the counter, picking up a cup. You always said life was about choices. You chose her approval over mine once. Don't expect me to believe you won't do it again. "I won't," he said simply. She turned to him. "You said that before." "I know," he replied. "That's why this time I'll prove it without words." Their eyes locked for a moment too long before she broke it. "The twins need stability, not promises." He nodded. "Then that's what I'll give them." Later that evening, after Leah put the twins to bed, Evan sat at the dining table writing something on a notepad. Leah walked by and glanced at the paper. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Transferring part of my company's shares," he said. Her brows furrowed. "Why?" "So the twins will always have security. Even if you don't trust me, I want you to know they'll never go through what you did." She stared at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know," he said. "That's why it matters." She didn't reply. Instead, she turned toward the window again. The city lights glittered in the distance, reflections of a world that had once rejected her. But this time, standing beside her, was the man who had once been the source of her pain, now trying to be her peace. Leah didn't say it out loud, but something in her heart shifted that night. Not forgiveness yet, something quieter. Respect. Evan watched her reflection in the glass. She didn't look away this time. And in the stillness between them, there was finally something that felt like progress. Dinner that night was quiet, but not cold. The tension that used to hang heavy between them had shifted into something softer, an unfamiliar calm. Leah had cooked, mostly because she couldn't stand watching Evan fumble through the kitchen again after the way he'd nearly burned the eggs that morning. The twins sat at the table, half asleep and half hungry, their small hands resting around spoons of soup. Evan watched them with quiet fascination, as if trying to memorize every detail. The way Maya hummed between bites, the way Caleb leaned his head against Leah's arm, tired but safe. He still couldn't believe they were his. Leah noticed him staring. "You're going to make them nervous," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "They're incredible. You did everything right." Her spoon paused mid-air. "Don't say that. You don't know what I had to do." "I don't," he admitted. "But I want to." Leah met his eyes, searching for sarcasm or guilt. She found neither, only sincerity. She sighed and set her spoon down. "There's not much to tell." It was one long stretch of trying to survive and pretending it didn't hurt. Evan's voice was low. "You shouldn't have had to pretend. Pretending was easier than remembering," she said. The twins' soft chatter filled the silence that followed. Leah leaned down to wipe Maya's mouth, then glanced back at Evan. "You said you saw your mother today." He nodded. "I did." "She didn't take it well, did she?" He shook his head. "No. But I didn't go there to be liked. I went to tell her that this," he gestured around the room, "is my family now." Leah studied him for a moment, unsure if she believed him. "And she let you walk away?" He gave a tired laugh. "She tried to stop me, of course. But I think she saw something she didn't expect." "What's that?" "That I wasn't scared of her anymore." Leah didn't respond right away. Her hand brushed over the tablecloth, fingers tracing an invisible pattern. "You used to tell me she'd come around if I just tried harder. If I dressed better, spoke softer, kept quiet in meetings." "I remember," he said, "and I hate that I said those things." Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes were sharp. "You didn't hate it then. You agreed with her." He nodded slowly. "I did. Because I wanted to fit into her world so badly that I forgot how to stand in my own." Leah tilted her head. "And now?" "Now I want to build one that fits all four of us." She looked down, trying not to show how those words hit her. "You talk like it's that simple." "I know it's not," he said, "but I'm done pretending it's impossible." The twins finished eating and ran off toward their room, laughing as they chased each other down the hall. The sound filled the air, breaking the heaviness in the room. Leah and Evan sat in silence, listening to the laughter fade behind the door. When it was gone, she spoke softly. "They like you." He smiled faintly. "That's generous." "They tolerate me." "No," she said. "They trust you." "Kids don't fake that." Her voice surprised even her. She hadn't meant to sound so open. She covered it quickly. "Don't ruin it." "I won't," he promised. "I don't plan on disappearing again." "Good," she said, "because if you do, they'll feel it more than I ever did." "I know," he said quietly. For a long time they didn't speak. The clock on the wall ticked softly between them. Leah stood, started clearing the dishes, and he joined her. "You don't have to," she said. "I want to," he replied. The same words he'd said the night before. But this time, she didn't argue. She let him help. When they finished, she dried her hands and turned toward him. "You're really trying, aren't you?" He nodded. "Because I wasted too much time proving I didn't care." Leah's gaze softened. "People don't change overnight, Evan." He smiled. "Then I'll keep proving it every day." Something in his tone made her heart stir, the steadiness in it, the quiet conviction. She had heard him promise things before, but this was different. There was no performance, no desperate edge, just truth. Later that night, when the twins were asleep, Leah sat on the couch sketching. The pencil glided across the page almost on its own. She was drawing again for the first time in years. Simple lines, no plan, no pressure, just motion. Evan walked in, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You're drawing," he said softly. "Couldn't sleep," she replied. He handed her a mug. "You used to say drawing was how you found peace." She took the tea. "Maybe I'm trying to find it again." He sat beside her, keeping space between them. "Can I see?" She hesitated, then turned the pad slightly. He smiled when he saw it. A rough sketch of the twins asleep under a blanket, their hands barely touching. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's real," she corrected. "And that's enough for me." Evan leaned back, looking at her quietly. "You always said real love is quiet. I never understood that before." "Because you never listened," she said, half smiling. He chuckled softly. "Fair." They sat together in silence, watching the city lights outside. The world below them moved fast, loud, and indifferent. But inside this space, everything slowed down. Breath, sound, time. Leah finally spoke again. "You know, for a long time, I prayed I'd stop missing you." He turned to her. "And did you?" She stared at the sketchbook. "No. I just stopped believing you'd come back." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe this is where I start earning it back." Leah didn't reply. She looked at him for a long moment, her face unreadable, then went back to her drawing. Minutes passed before she whispered, "You still have a lot to prove." "I know," he said softly. "But I'm not leaving until I do." The air between them shifted again. Less anger, more truth. Leah looked up from her sketch. "You're different," she said finally. Evan smiled faintly. "No, I'm the same man, just finally willing to fight for the right things." She studied him, and for the first time in years, she didn't see the man who left. She saw the one she had fallen for before everything went wrong. She stood to check on the twins, her voice gentle as she passed him. "Don't make me regret letting you in again." He watched her walk away, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. When she disappeared down the hallway, he whispered to himself, "I won't." When she returned, she found him asleep on the couch, head tilted back, the light from the city washing over him. For a moment, she stood still, watching the man who once shattered her heart, now sleeping inches from the children he never knew. She pulled the blanket from the chair and placed it over him quietly. He didn't wake. Leah stood there for a while, her hand hovering near his shoulder but not touching. There were still cracks between them, deep and old. But that night, as the wind pressed softly against the glass, she realized something had shifted. Forgiveness hadn't come, but peace had started to. She turned off the light and whispered into the quiet room, "Maybe people can change." Then she went to bed, unaware that Evan heard every word. And for the first time in years, he smiled in his sleep. Morning light filtered through the curtains and landed across the couch where Evan slept. His coat served as a blanket now, his hand resting near the edge of the cushion. It had been years since he'd slept that deeply. He didn't dream about boardrooms, deadlines, or contracts. He dreamed of small hands, laughter, and Leah's voice somewhere in the distance calling the twins for breakfast. That voice was real now. "Caleb, careful, you'll spill the milk." Evan opened his eyes, blinking against the light. The smell of toast and syrup drifted through the air. The twins were sitting at the table, talking between mouthfuls of food while Leah moved around the kitchen, her hair tied up messily, her robe brushing her knees. For a second, he just watched them, this picture of something he thought he'd lost forever. Then, with all the energy of two 5-year-olds, the twins noticed him. "He's awake," Maya shouted. Before he could react, both children ran from the table and jumped onto the couch. Caleb landed beside him, while Maya clung to his arm. Evan laughed, surprised. Hey, careful. "You snore," Caleb said, giggling. "Mummy said you were tired." Leah froze mid-step, spoon still in her hand. "I said he was busy, not tired," she corrected. Maya tilted her head. "He looks tired." Evan grinned. "That's because I've been working too much." "Like Mummy?" Caleb asked. Leah shot him a look, but there was amusement behind it. "Eat your breakfast, mister." The twins obeyed, running back to the table. Evan stretched, sitting up slowly. "They're full of energy." "They're kids," Leah said, pouring another cup of coffee. "They don't know what tired feels like yet." He smiled. "You sound like you haven't stopped since they were born." "I haven't," she said plainly. He accepted the cup she handed him. "You've done everything alone. I keep realizing that every minute I'm here." Her tone stayed even. "It's been my life for 5 years. You learn to survive." "I wish I'd been here," he said quietly. Leah didn't respond right away. She looked at him, then at the twins, then back at him again. "You can't change what's behind us. The best thing you can do now is stay long enough to make the present mean something." He nodded. "That's exactly what I plan to do." The twins' laughter pulled their attention. Caleb had poured too much syrup, and Maya was teasing him. Leah sighed but smiled faintly. Evan leaned back, watching them. "They have your energy. They have your stubbornness," she said, almost smiling. "Then I guess we're even," he replied. For the first time in years, the morning didn't feel like a performance of routine. It felt real, ordinary in a way that was almost sacred. After breakfast, Leah helped the twins get dressed for the day. She was planning to take them to the park again, but before she could suggest it, Evan spoke up. "Can I come this time?" She hesitated. "You have work, don't you?" He shook his head. "I cancelled everything for the week." She raised an eyebrow. "That's not like you." "It's the first time I'm doing something right," he said simply. They drove together, the twins in the back seat singing along to a song from the radio. The air between Leah and Evan was light but cautious. She wasn't used to sharing space with him anymore. He wasn't used to silence that didn't need fixing. At the park, the twins ran ahead, their coats flapping behind them. Leah stood by the bench, watching them. Evan stood beside her. "Last time I was here," he said quietly, "you were sitting on that bench. It was raining." She didn't look at him. "I remember," he exhaled, the memory still fresh. "You were trying to protect them with nothing but a blanket. And you were trying to fix it with a coat," she said. He turned toward her. "You think that's all I was doing? I think you were shocked, maybe sorry. But that's not the same as change." He nodded slowly. "Then let me show you the difference." Maya's laughter carried across the park as Caleb chased her toward the swings. Leah's eyes softened. "They've been through more than they'll ever remember," she said quietly. Evan's voice broke a little. "You held them together. I left you alone to do it." Leah's tone stayed calm. "You left because you were afraid of losing your image. You cared more about reputation than reality." He didn't deny it. "I did. But when I saw you that night, sitting there with them, I realized something. I spent years trying to build a name that people respected, but it meant nothing if the only person who mattered couldn't look me in the eye." Her gaze met his. "Words, Evan. Always your strongest weapon." He took a breath. "Then stop listening to them. Watch what I do instead." For the rest of the morning, he did just that. He pushed the twins on the swings, taught Caleb how to balance, chased Maya when she ran too far, and let them climb onto his shoulders as if he'd been there all along. Leah sat back, quietly observing, every minute fighting between disbelief and reluctant warmth. When they stopped for lunch at a small cafe nearby, Evan insisted on carrying both kids at once until Leah laughed. "You're going to hurt yourself." He grinned. "Worth it." At the table, Caleb leaned his head on his father's arm while Maya told a story about school. Evan listened like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. Leah noticed the difference, the way his attention didn't wander to his phone, the way he didn't check the time, the way he laughed with them instead of over them. When the twins went to wash their hands, Leah spoke softly. "You seem different." He looked at her. "That's because I am—" "You said that before," she reminded him. "I know," he said. "But this time, you don't have to believe me yet. Just let me keep showing you." Leah looked at him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "You're doing well today." He smiled faintly. "That almost sounds like a compliment. Don't get used to it." He chuckled, and for the first time in years, she didn't mind the sound. After lunch, they walked back to the car together. The twins held hands, skipping ahead. Evan reached out to open the car door, and for a brief second, his hand brushed hers. The touch was small but charged. They both froze. Leah didn't pull away immediately, but when she did, she looked down at her shoes. Evan's voice was quiet. "I know you don't trust me, but one day, I hope you'll remember what this feels like, and not the night I left." Her throat tightened. "Don't make me remember anything. Just keep doing what you're doing." They drove home in silence. The twins fell asleep in the back seat, their heads leaning against each other. The rhythm of their breathing filled the car. Leah glanced at them through the rearview mirror, her voice almost a whisper. "They look peaceful when you're around. It's strange." Evan smiled faintly. "Maybe they know I finally came home." When they got back to the penthouse, Leah carried Maya while Evan lifted Caleb. The twins didn't wake. She laid them on the couch, tucking a blanket around them. Evan stood beside her, watching. "They trust you completely," he said. "They're all I've had," she replied softly. He hesitated. "Can I say something without ruining this moment?" She sighed. "You usually ruin them anyway." He smiled faintly. "I don't want to be a visitor in their lives, Leah. I want to be a father." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "A father is more than a title, Evan. You don't earn it by showing up. You earn it by staying." "I will," he said quietly. "Even if you never let me back into your heart, I'll stay for them." She looked at him, unsure what to say. His words didn't sound rehearsed this time. They sounded lived. The twins shifted in their sleep, their hands finding each other again. Leah stared at them for a long time, then whispered, "They deserve it." Evan nodded. "So do you." Her eyes glistened, but she turned away quickly. "Don't start saying things you can't prove." "Then I'll prove them," he said. Day by day, Leah didn't answer. She went to the kitchen, pretending to look for something while he stayed in the living room. Evan sat on the edge of the couch, his gaze on the twins. He brushed Caleb's hair back gently, a small smile tugging at his lips. In that moment, it didn't matter how much time he'd lost. What mattered was that there was still time left to make things right. Leah leaned against the wall, unseen, watching him. Something in her chest loosened. She had told herself for years that she'd never forgive him. But watching him now, gentle, patient, changed, she realized forgiveness wasn't an instant decision. It was a process, unfolding quietly, like dawn after too long a night. And though she wouldn't say it aloud, a single thought formed in her heart. Maybe this time, he meant it. The twins were asleep early that night, worn out from the day at the park. Their tiny snores filled the quiet space of the penthouse. Leah tucked the blanket around them, brushing Caleb's hair gently off his forehead. Maya stirred, then settled again. Evan stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, watching silently. There was something reverent in his gaze, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His children, peaceful, unafraid, safe. Leah turned around, startled slightly to see him there. "You scared me," she whispered. "Didn't mean to," he said quietly. "I just didn't want to miss this." She closed the door softly behind her and they walked back to the living room. The city glowed through the windows, reflections of light shimmering on the floor. The air between them felt heavy, not hostile but honest. Leah sank into the couch. Evan hesitated, then sat across from her, keeping space between them. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the city below. Then she broke the silence. "You said earlier that you wanted to know what it was like. What happened after you left?" He nodded, slowly. "Yes." She exhaled, her fingers tracing the seam of the couch. "I told you parts of it, but there's something I didn't say." Evan straightened. "You can tell me anything." Her eyes lifted, steady but weary. "There was a night, a year after you left. I was working late cleaning an office downtown. I was so tired I could barely stand. I remember sitting on the floor, surrounded by trash bags and old papers, and realizing I had $20 left in my account. I hadn't eaten all day, but I'd saved enough for formula and bus fare." Her voice grew quieter. "That night, I thought about giving up. I held the twins' pictures and told myself maybe they'd have a better chance without me dragging them through the dirt." Evan's heart dropped. "Leah." She shook her head. "Let me finish." He fell silent, every word from her slicing through him. "I almost walked away that night," she whispered. "I even wrote a note. But something stopped me." Maya woke up crying. It was past midnight, and I could hear her little voice in the back of my mind. That sound, just that sound, made me realize I couldn't leave. They were my reason to keep breathing. She blinked, holding back tears. "I promised myself from that night on that no matter how hard it got, I'd never let them see me broken. They deserved a mother who didn't quit." Evan sat completely still, every muscle tight. His chest ached in a way words couldn't describe. He had been at galas that same year, smiling for photos, clinking glasses, telling himself he was doing what was right, all while she'd been sitting on a cold office floor trying to find a reason to stay alive. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Leah, I should have been there. Don't," she said quietly. "You can't fix that night. You can't fix the nights that followed." "I know," he said, voice rough. "But I need you to know something. Every day since I saw you again, I've been asking myself who I became back then, and I hate that man. I don't even recognize him anymore." She looked up at him. "You were still you, Evan. You just chose pride over love. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human." He gave a humorless laugh. "That's worse somehow." "No," she said. "It means you can change." He met her eyes, searching for something, anything that looked like forgiveness. "Do you believe that? That I can change?" "I believe people learn when they lose enough," she said softly. "And you lost a lot." Evan's throat tightened. "I lost everything that mattered." Leah's expression softened for the first time. "And yet you still have a chance to rebuild it." He leaned back, taking her in, the curve of her shoulders, the strength in her tired eyes. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." She smiled faintly. "I had to be. I wish I'd had your strength back then." She shook her head. "If you had, maybe we wouldn't have learned anything." That caught him off guard. "Learned what?" "That love without effort dies," she said simply. "That you can't build a home on pride. That sometimes losing what you wanted teaches you what you need." He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. For a long while, they sat in silence again. The air felt heavy but warm. Not the silence of strangers, something closer to peace. Evan finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "I've been writing letters to them." Leah frowned slightly. "To the twins?" He nodded. "Every night since you came here. Letters about everything I missed, their first steps, their birthdays. How I imagine they laughed when you tickled them. I know they can't read them yet, but one day, I want them to know, I tried to make up for lost time." Leah's face softened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know if I had the right to," he admitted. "I didn't think you'd believe me." She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "I believe you wrote them." He smiled, a little relieved. "That's a start." Leah leaned back on the couch, tired but strangely at ease. "Maybe it is." The quiet returned, softer this time. The hum of the heater, the ticking clock, the faint city noises below, it all blended into something that felt safe. Evan glanced at her sketchbook on the table. "What are you drawing tonight?" "Nothing yet," she said. "I was waiting for quiet." He gestured around. "You have it now." She looked at him. "It's not the kind of quiet I meant." He smiled faintly. "No, it's better." She didn't argue. She picked up the pencil and started sketching without another word. The sound of lead against paper filled the room. Evan watched, silent, not wanting to interrupt. Minutes passed. Then Leah turned the pad toward him. It was a drawing of the twins, sleeping peacefully on the couch earlier that day. Behind them, faintly outlined, was him, sitting nearby with his hands folded, head bowed. He stared at it. "You drew me." She shrugged lightly. "It's what I saw." He studied the image, voice quiet. "You didn't draw me as I was." "No," she said softly. "I drew you as you are now." Something in his chest broke open at those words. He couldn't speak for a moment. "Thank you," he finally whispered. Leah set the sketchbook down and stood. "Don't thank me. Just don't make me regret believing that picture." He nodded. "I won't." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Good night, Evan." He smiled faintly. "Good night, Leah." When she disappeared down the hall, Evan stayed on the couch, staring at the drawing. He ran his thumb gently over the page. For the first time, he didn't see the man who failed. He saw the man trying to make it right. Outside, snow began to fall again, quiet, slow, forgiving. And inside, for the first time since their world fell apart, the night didn't feel cold. The morning light was soft, filtered through falling snow that brushed against the glass. Leah woke early, still half lost in sleep. The apartment was quiet, too quiet for a home that usually woke with twin laughter. She sat up and noticed immediately that the couch was empty. Evan's blanket was folded neatly on the armrest, and the kettle was already warm. Her first thought was the old one, the one that used to whisper whenever something good began to feel real. He left. She pushed the thought away, clutching her robe tighter. The scent of coffee filled the air. A note rested by the cup. Went out for a bit. "Don't worry. I'll be back soon." Leah sighed, torn between irritation and curiosity. For years, silence from him had meant abandonment. Now it was something else, unsettling but not empty. The twins stirred in their room, their soft voices breaking her thoughts. "Mummy, can we have pancakes?" "Give me 5 minutes," she said, smiling faintly as she entered their room. They were already sitting up, hair wild, faces bright with the unbreakable joy of children who hadn't learned fear yet. She brushed Caleb's curls back and kissed Maya's cheek. While she made breakfast, her mind wandered. She still didn't know what to do with this version of Evan, this patient, quieter man who listened instead of talking. He'd promised change, but she'd learned the hard way that promises didn't feed children or keep the heat running. An hour later, just as the snow started falling heavier, the door opened. Evan stepped in, shaking snow from his coat. He looked different, not because of what he wore, but because of the peace in his face. In his hand, he carried a small cardboard box. "You're back early," Leah said carefully. He smiled. Couldn't stay away long. Caleb and Maya ran toward him. "You brought something." He laughed, crouching to their level. "Maybe I did." He set the box on the floor and opened it slowly. Inside was a small wooden easel, a fresh set of paints, brushes, and a stack of new sketch pads. Leah froze. "I remembered what you told me," he said, standing, "about how you stopped painting when hope stopped making sense. You once said art made you feel seen. I want you to feel that again." Leah's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," he said softly. "That's why I wanted to." The twins looked at the set in awe. "Mommy, can we paint too?" Leah's eyes softened as she crouched beside them. "Maybe later. These are special." She glanced at Evan, struggling to find words. "You remembered the colors I used?" He nodded. "Every one. I ordered them last night." Leah ran her fingers along the edge of a brush. You even got the same size canvas I used to buy. How did you— You mentioned once that you liked the smaller ones, he said quietly. Said they felt more personal. Like secrets on display. For a moment, her heart betrayed her, catching between gratitude and fear. She hadn't expected him to remember those things, the tiny details that only someone who paid attention would notice. Caleb tugged at her robe. Can we make Mommy a picture? Evan smiled. That's the plan. Come on, let's set it up. Together, they cleared the coffee table. Leah watched as Evan helped the twins pour small blobs of paint into trays. He showed them how to hold the brushes gently, the way she used to show him when they first met. Her heart swelled and ached all at once. The twins laughed as they painted, color everywhere, on paper, on hands, on cheeks. Evan didn't care. He laughed with them, helping them mix new shades, guiding them with patience she hadn't seen in him before. When they were done, Maya held up her paper proudly. It's our family, she said. That's Mommy, that's me, that's Caleb. She pointed at a figure with messy hair and a big smile. And that's you. Evan looked at it, his throat tightening. The drawing was crude and sweet, made of colors that didn't blend right, but to him it was perfect. He crouched down and said softly, Can I keep this? Maya nodded. You have to, so you don't forget us again. Leah froze at her daughter's words. The innocence behind them carried more truth than any accusation ever could. Evan's smile faltered for a second, then steadied. I won't, he said gently. I'll hang it in my office. Leah turned away, pretending to clean the table. Her hands shook. It wasn't anger this time. It was something deeper. Hope was creeping back in, uninvited and dangerous. When the twins ran off to wash their hands, Evan approached her. You're quiet. I'm thinking, she said, still facing away. She sighed. About how strange this all feels. Like I'm waiting for something to go wrong. He nodded. I understand. No, you don't, she said softly. Every time something good happened after you left, it fell apart. So now, even when things are calm, I can't relax. I keep waiting for the silence to turn back into goodbye. Evan's voice was low. Then I'll fill the silence with something better. She looked at him, skeptical but listening. Like what? Consistency, he said simply. Not words, not gifts, just showing up. She folded her arms. You're already doing that. Then I'll keep doing it until you believe it's real. Leah didn't answer right away. Her guard was still high, but something in her eyes softened. You sound like someone who's finally learned how to stay. He smiled faintly. Maybe I just learned what losing feels like. They both turned as the twins ran back into the room, dripping water from their hands and laughing. The heaviness between them dissolved into small, easy chaos again. Maya jumped into Leah's lap. Mommy, we're hungry again. Leah laughed softly. You just ate. Caleb climbed up beside her. Can we have snacks? The ones with chocolate? Evan chuckled. You've got my appetite. Leah smiled at the kids, brushing their hair from their faces. All right, snacks it is. But after that, quiet time. As she stood to grab the box from the counter, Evan followed. Let me help. She handed him a tray. Their fingers brushed again, small contact, electric and real. Neither moved for a heartbeat. When Leah finally looked up, her tone softened. You're trying too hard. I'd rather try too hard than not at all, he said. That line stayed with her for the rest of the afternoon. Later, while the twins napped, Leah sat by the window with the new paints beside her. The skyline stretched far and endless. She dipped the brush into a pale shade of blue and dragged it across the canvas, slow and deliberate. Evan came up behind her quietly, watching. You're painting again, he said. Not sure what it is yet, she replied. Maybe nothing, or maybe something important, he said. Sometimes you don't know what you're creating until it's done. She glanced back at him. That's how love works too, isn't it? He smiled softly. Maybe. You start with chaos, color, and faith. Faith? She repeated. He nodded. Faith that it'll make sense someday. She turned back to the canvas. You sound like you've been thinking about this a lot. I have, he said honestly. Every night since I found you. Leah looked out the window, her voice low. You say it like you were the one lost. He met her eyes. I was. The air between them grew still again, heavy with truth, but no longer painful. When evening came, the twins woke to the sight of their mother painting and their father quietly making dinner. For the first time, their home didn't feel like a memory of what was lost. It felt like something being rebuilt, brick by brick, day by day. Leah stood behind the couch, watching Evan stir the pot with clumsy determination. You're terrible at this, she said. He grinned. I'm getting better. She laughed softly. You always say that. He looked over his shoulder. Because it's always true. The laughter that followed was quiet but genuine. It carried through the kitchen, through the hall, and into the rooms where loneliness used to live. By the time the twins came running in, the air smelled of soup and warmth. Leah sat beside them, the canvas still drying near the window. On it, the faint outline of a home could be seen, unfinished but clear. Evan looked at it before sitting down. That's new, he said. She smiled. It's still a work in progress. So are we, he replied. Leah met his eyes, holding his gaze longer than before. Then maybe there's still hope after all. He didn't answer, but the look on his face said everything. Outside, snow fell again. Inside, warmth lingered where words had failed. And for the first time, Leah didn't feel afraid of tomorrow. The night air was soft, heavy with the scent of soup and paint. The twins had fallen asleep quickly, still clutching the small drawings they made earlier. Leah tucked the blanket around them, brushed their cheeks, and stood quietly for a moment, watching their faces. Peace looked good on them. When she turned, she found Evan leaning against the doorway. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened, his expression quiet. They sleep deeper here, he said. You can tell they feel safe. Leah nodded. It's been a long time since they've had a reason to. He watched her tuck the sketchbooks onto the shelf. They'll remember this one day. The warmth, the laughter. Not the cold. She didn't look at him. I hope you're right. They walked back into the living room together. The painting Leah had started earlier leaned against the wall near the window. The unfinished outline of a home glowed faintly in the city light. Evan paused, staring at it. You didn't tell me you were painting something so personal. I didn't plan to, she said. It just came out that way. It's beautiful. It's not done. He smiled. Neither are we. Leah sat on the couch, tired but calm. You always find the right words now. He sat across from her. Because I've stopped using them to win. I just use them to be honest. Her eyes softened slightly. And what's honest tonight? He leaned forward. That I didn't come back to ease my guilt. I came back because I still love you. The air between them stilled. Leah didn't move, but her breathing changed. Don't say that, Evan. Why not? He asked quietly. Because love isn't enough. It wasn't before, and it's not now. He nodded slowly. You're right. It's not enough by itself. But love with effort, with truth, with time, that might be. Leah looked away, her voice softer now. You sound sure of yourself. I'm not, he said honestly. But I'm sure of you. She studied his face. There was no arrogance there anymore, no pride, just the tired sincerity of a man who'd spent years running from the right thing. Leah leaned back, arms crossed loosely. You make it sound easy, but you didn't see the things I had to do to stay alive. You didn't see the nights I didn't sleep because I couldn't stop hearing your mother's voice. You didn't see me walking through the snow with a stroller that didn't have wheels straight. Evan's voice cracked. I can see it now. Every word you say paints a picture I can't erase. Good, she said. Because I don't ever want you to forget it. I don't want you to forget what pride costs. He nodded. I won't. I live with that every day. Leah's eyes drifted toward the window. Then maybe there's a reason you came back. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's so you could finally see what you broke. Maybe, he said quietly. But I want to believe it's also so I can rebuild it. With you. Her voice softened. You still think we could ever be that again? He shook his head. Not what we were. Something better. She tilted her head. Better? Yes, he said. Because this time, it wouldn't be about proving anything to anyone. It would just be about peace. Leah stared at him, torn between anger and something dangerously close to forgiveness. You're not supposed to say things like that. Why? He asked. Because it makes me remember what it felt like to believe you, she said. Evan leaned forward slightly. Then believe me again. Not because of who I was, but because of who I'm trying to be. She looked down, her fingers tracing the seam of her jeans. You talk like a man who's already been forgiven. I haven't been, he said. But I'm learning to forgive myself for being weak. That's how I'll earn yours. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. The honesty in his voice left no room for denial. For a while, they sat in silence again, the kind that doesn't demand answers. The snow outside fell slower now, thick flakes gliding down the glass like whispers. Finally, Leah stood and walked to the window. The city lights reflected against her face, softening her features. You know, she said quietly, I used to paint to forget you. Every stroke was a way of convincing myself that you were gone. He rose from the couch, standing a few feet behind her. And now? She turned slightly, meeting his eyes. Now I paint because I don't want to forget what I survived. He nodded. That's fair. Leah looked down at her hands, paint still faintly staining her fingers. When I saw you at that park bench, I thought it was a dream. I didn't believe you were real. I didn't believe I was either, he said softly. I'd been living like a shadow, and then I saw you, and everything became real again. Her throat tightened. You always did know how to say things that get under my skin. He smiled faintly. Old habit. She turned fully toward him now, her voice trembling but steady. Evan, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's a second chance or a cruel memory trying to test me, but I know I'm tired of fighting the past. He took a careful step closer. Then stop fighting it. Let's build something new. Leah didn't move. Her eyes glistened. You think it's that easy? No, he said. But I think it's worth trying. The distance between them felt smaller now. Not because of space, but because of truth. Evan's voice lowered. You can hate me for what I did. You can remind me every day of what I failed to be. But just let me stay close enough to prove I've learned. Leah's voice broke into a whisper. Why now, Evan? Why after all this time? He swallowed hard. Because seeing you there that night, with them, it broke something in me. For the first time I saw who I was without you, and I didn't like that man. I never want to see him again. Her eyes shimmered under the faint glow of the city. And what if you lose this version of yourself too? Then I'll keep finding my way back, he said. To you, to them, to who I should have been all along. She turned back toward the window. The silence stretched long, filled only by the soft ticking of the clock. Then, finally, she whispered, You're learning. He stepped beside her, careful not to touch. From the best teacher. She smiled faintly, still facing the glass. Don't get sentimental. It doesn't suit you. He chuckled softly. Maybe it suits the man I'm becoming. They stood there together, side by side, neither speaking again. The reflection of their faces overlapped in the glass. Two people once broken by pride, now standing in quiet understanding. Leah exhaled, her breath fogging the window slightly. If you keep doing this, I might start believing you. I'll take that, he said. Belief is the first step. Leah finally turned to him, eyes searching his face. Then don't make me regret it. I won't, he promised. For the first time in years, she didn't look away. And as the snow fell heavier outside, the distance between them melted, slowly, carefully, quietly. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't have to. That night, they stood together long after the city went still. No grand words, no declarations, just two hearts, once broken, now beating in the same room again, finally, without fear. Before we move on, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen someone trying to fix what they broke, piece by piece? Do you believe people truly change, or do they only learn to hide their guilt better? If this story has touched you so far, take a second to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if the person who left came back trying to make things right? And if you want to hear how this story unfolds, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories so you don't miss the next chapter. Now, let's see what tomorrow brings for Leah, Evan, and the twins. The morning began quietly, with sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The air was warmer, calmer. Leah stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while the smell of butter and coffee filled the kitchen. She wore one of Evan's shirts over her robe. An accident, she told herself, but it was soft and warm, and she didn't take it off. From the living room came laughter. The twins were playing a guessing game with their father. Evan was pretending to be bad at it, letting them win every round. Maya's giggle carried through the air, followed by Caleb's voice. "Daddy, you're too slow." The word hit him like sunlight. Daddy. He froze for a second, then smiled so faintly Leah almost missed it. Leah poured syrup onto a plate and turned toward him. "You're losing on purpose." He grinned. "Of course I am. You think I'd survive winning against them?" Caleb laughed. "Mommy wins all the time." Evan shot Leah a playful look. "That sounds about right." For the first time in years, their home felt full. Not perfect, not fixed, but full. Breakfast was simple: pancakes, fruit, and laughter. Leah watched the twins sneak extra syrup, while Evan told them stories about when he was their age. He exaggerated, making Caleb gasp and Maya giggle. She hadn't seen her children this happy in months. But beneath her calm smile, Leah felt the tremor of old fears. Happiness always felt temporary. Still, she let herself breathe in the moment, memorizing the sound of their laughter. When breakfast ended, Evan cleared the table while Leah dressed the twins. When she came back, she found him by the counter, writing something in a small notebook. "What's that?" she asked. He looked up. "A list." "For what?" "For everything I said I'd do and never did," he said. "I'm writing them down, one by one." Leah blinked. "Why?" "So I don't forget again." She leaned against the counter, watching him. "You're serious about this?" He smiled softly. "More serious than I've ever been." Before she could answer, Maya ran in holding her shoes. "Can we go to the library today?" Leah smiled. "The library?" Evan glanced at Leah. "Let's go." An hour later, they were walking through the small neighborhood library. Quiet, warm, smelling faintly of paper and wood polish. Leah hadn't been there since before the twins were born. The sight of it filled her chest with something she couldn't name. Evan helped Caleb pick out a book about airplanes, while Maya held her mother's hand, pointing out colorful covers. Leah caught herself smiling. This was the kind of day she'd dreamed about during her hardest nights. Simple, steady, normal. At the reading table, the twins listened to Leah read aloud, her soft voice wrapping around every word. Evan watched from across the room, his expression unreadable, his eyes full, of the kind of ache that only comes from regret mixed with gratitude. When the twins wandered off to explore the children's section, he walked over quietly. "You always read like that," he said. She looked up, smiling faintly. "Like what?" "Like the words matter." "They do," she said. "They always did." He nodded slowly. "That's what I missed the most. The way you make things feel alive." Leah hesitated, unsure how to respond. Compliments from him used to sound rehearsed. This one didn't. It was simple, unpolished, true. They walked through the aisles together in silence for a few moments, the air thick with unspoken memories. Finally, Leah broke the quiet. "You said you were writing a list." He nodded. "Yeah. What's the first thing on it?" He looked down. "Be a father." She stopped walking. "You already are." He shook his head. "Not yet. Not the kind they deserve. I miss too much. I want them to remember me for who I am now, not who I was." Leah studied him for a moment. "That's a heavy thing to carry." He smiled faintly. "So is guilt. This one feels better." She almost smiled back. Later, when they left the library, snow was falling again, thin, steady flakes. Evan offered her his coat as they walked to the car. Leah hesitated, then took it, slipping her arms into the warmth. The twins ran ahead, holding hands, laughing as they caught snowflakes on their tongues. "They love the snow," he said. "They get that from me," Leah replied. "I know," he said softly. "You always said snow felt like a second chance." She looked at him sharply. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything now," he said. She turned away, pretending to watch the kids. "You used to forget everything that mattered. I'm done forgetting." His tone was quiet but firm, and she heard no trace of the man he used to be. That afternoon, back at the penthouse, Leah painted while the twins napped. The canvas was different now, warmer, more alive. She painted light streaming through windows, small hands reaching for it. Evan sat across from her, typing on his laptop. For once, he wasn't working for his company. He was filling out forms, school donations, community projects, quiet efforts to build something good beyond himself. Leah noticed but didn't comment. Instead, she asked, "You're quieter these days." He looked up. "I'm learning silence doesn't mean absence." She nodded. "Sometimes silence is peace. And sometimes," he said, "it's the space where healing starts." Leah looked at him, eyes softening despite herself. "You're changing, Evan." He smiled faintly. "That's the goal." They fell into a rhythm as the day went on. No arguments, no tension, just quiet tasks shared between two people, rediscovering what it meant to coexist. When the twins woke, Evan helped them build a pillow fort while Leah made dinner. He crawled inside with them, listening to their giggles. She leaned against the counter, watching the scene, her eyes bright. He noticed her watching and smiled. "You want to join us?" She laughed softly. "No. You're doing fine without me." He shook his head. "Not true. It's always better when you're part of it." Her heart skipped, but she didn't show it. "You're good with them." "I'm learning from you," he said. Later, after dinner, the twins curled up under the blanket, watching a cartoon. Leah sat beside them, and Evan took the chair opposite. The quiet between them was warm again, familiar. When the show ended, Leah carried the twins to bed. She came back to find Evan cleaning the table, humming under his breath. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied, "but it helps me think." She smiled faintly. "About what?" "About how lucky I am to get another chance," he said. Leah paused, her hands resting on the back of the couch. "Not many people get one." "I know," he said softly. "That's why I'm not wasting it." For a long time, neither spoke. The room glowed with the faint amber light of the lamps, and outside, the city pulsed quietly. Leah finally said, "You're starting to feel like someone I used to know." Evan looked up. "Someone good?" She nodded slowly. "Someone I could trust." He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said everything. That night, when Leah finally went to her room, she found another note on her nightstand. "Thank you for letting me try again." It wasn't signed, but she knew the handwriting. She sat down, the note in her hands, the weight of it heavier than any apology could ever be. For the first time, she smiled before falling asleep. And in the next room, Evan stayed awake, watching the city lights fade into dawn, determined to keep every promise he'd made, quietly, consistently, day after day. The next evening came with a soft drizzle over Chicago, the kind that painted the city in reflections and light. Inside the penthouse, warmth lingered in the air, gentle music playing. Low, the scent of dinner still fading from the kitchen. The twins were asleep early, worn out after a long day. Leah stood by the dining table sorting through papers, her brows furrowed. She had been offered a part-time job at a community arts center, something small but meaningful. It would help her stand on her own again, something she both wanted and feared. Evan walked in quietly, his shirt sleeves rolled, his hair slightly tousled. "You're still up," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "I've been thinking about this." He glanced at the papers. "The job?" She nodded. "They want me to start next week. It's only a few hours a day, but it's something." He smiled. "That's not just something, Leah. That's you coming back to yourself." She looked at him, cautious. "You're not upset?" "Upset?" he repeated. "Why would I be?" "Because it means I'll be gone part of the day." You'll have to handle the twins sometimes. He chuckled. I think I can survive a few hours of chaos. Leah smiled faintly, her guard lowering. You say that now. I mean it, he said. You've carried this alone for years. Let me do my part. Her expression softened. You sound like someone who finally understands partnership. I had the best teacher, he replied. The room fell into a quiet rhythm again. Leah sat, shuffling the papers. Evan poured 2 glasses of water and joined her. You've been thinking about this all night, haven't you? She nodded. I want to take it, but it feels strange. Like if I step into something new, I might lose what little peace we've built here. Evan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Peace doesn't disappear when you grow. It expands with you. Her lips curved slightly. You've gotten wiser. I've had time to listen, he said, and watching you with them, watching how strong you've become, it's changed me. Leah met his gaze, her voice quieter now. You're different, Evan. It's hard to believe, but it's true. He nodded. Then let me keep proving it. Her fingers brushed the edge of the papers again. The job's not glamorous. It's small, and the pay barely covers anything. Then it's perfect, he said gently. It's not about money. It's about meaning. Leah looked down, smiling despite herself. You used to say meaning doesn't pay bills. He chuckled. I was wrong. Meaning pays in peace. Her laughter came softly, unexpected. You should write that down. It's too good to waste. He smiled. Maybe the first will. The rain outside picked up, tapping against the glass. Leah gathered the papers into a neat pile, exhaling slowly. I think I'll accept it. Evan nodded. You should. Thank you, she said, her tone low, for not trying to control it. I learned my lesson, he said quietly. Real love isn't about control. It's about trust. Leah looked up. You used to say trust was earned through results. He smiled faintly. Now I know it's earned through presence. Her eyes softened again. You talk like a man who's finally at peace with himself. I'm getting there, he said. Every day feels like a step closer. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need words. Then Evan spoke again. Can I show you something? Leah nodded. He stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a folder. Inside were blueprints, carefully folded and marked. What's that? She asked. He opened it slowly and turned it toward her. I've been designing something new. A community art and resource center. Free programs for women and families. It's going to be named the Haven Project. Leah's eyes widened. Evan, it's not a business, he said quickly. It's a promise. I want to use what I have to build something that matters. I don't want wealth to be about power anymore. I want it to be about purpose. Her throat tightened. And you're showing me this because it started with you, he said softly. The idea came the night you told me about that office job, the one where you almost gave up. I kept thinking, what if someone had been there to help? What if there was a place where no one had to beg for warmth? Leah blinked, her eyes glistening. You're serious? He nodded. Completely. The first location will be near the park where I found you. She couldn't speak for a moment. When she finally did, her voice trembled. You remembered every detail. I remember everything now, he said quietly. Because you taught me what forgetting costs. Leah stood, crossing her arms tightly, not in defense but to hold herself together. You're really doing this? Yes, he said, and I want you to be part of it. She blinked. Me, he nodded. You'll manage the art program, teach, design, whatever you want. It's yours as much as it's mine. Leah laughed softly, shaking her head. You don't give up easily. I gave up once, he said. Never again. For the first time, Leah stepped closer. Close enough to see the faint tiredness around his eyes, the kind that came from honest effort. She reached out, touching the edge of the blueprint. If this is real, if you mean it, then maybe you're not the man I thought you were. He smiled faintly. Maybe I finally became the man you saw in me before I lost myself. Leah's breath caught. For a heartbeat, they stood there, inches apart. the space between them, humming with years of pain and the faint spark of something returning. She took a small step back. "You should rest. It's late." He nodded, not pushing. "Good night, Leah." She hesitated at the hallway. "Good night, Evan." When she turned away, her chest felt full. Too full. For the first time, the idea of trusting him again didn't terrify her. Evan stayed at the table, staring at the blueprints. The Haven project wasn't just for her, it was for the version of her who had sat on that cold bench, holding two shivering children, waiting for someone to show up. And now, he finally was. Outside, the rain eased into quiet mist. Inside, two hearts that had once broken beyond repair began to beat in rhythm again. Not fast, not desperate, but steady. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the beginning of love rediscovered. Snow fell gently over the city the next morning, coating everything in a soft white calm. Leah stood in front of the mirror, buttoning her coat, her breath visible in the cold air seeping through the window. It was her first day at the Community Art Center, her first real step into something new. The twins were already awake, giggling in their room. Evan was helping them tie their shoes, crouched down and patient as ever. It was strange, Leah thought, how quickly he had learned the small details of fatherhood, the way Maya's laces always tangled, how Caleb liked to double knot his. When Leah stepped into the hall, Maya's eyes widened. "Mommy, you look pretty." Leah smiled softly. "Thank you, baby." Caleb tilted his head. "Are you going to work?" "Yes," she said, kneeling to their level. "It's just for a few hours. I'll be back before dinner." Evan looked up. "We'll pick you up." Leah blinked. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said, standing. "It's your first day. That deserves a family celebration." She hesitated, unsure what to say. Old habits told her to refuse, to keep control, but the sincerity in his eyes made her nod. "All right," she said quietly. "After work." He smiled, simple and content. "We'll be there." As she gathered her bag, she noticed a small thermos on the counter. Evan handed it to her. "Coffee," he said. "The way you used to like it." Leah took it, surprised. "You remembered?" "I remember everything now," he said softly. She held his gaze for a second longer than she meant to, then turned away, hiding the small smile that tugged at her lips. The art center was a modest building downtown, warm lights behind frosted windows, a place that smelled faintly of clay, paint and hope. Leah paused at the entrance, her heart thudding. The last time she'd walked into a new job, she'd been terrified. Today, the fear felt different, lighter, mixed with anticipation. Inside, the director, Mrs. Olcott, greeted her with a kind smile. "You must be Leah Holt. Welcome." Leah hesitated at the sound of the name but didn't correct her. "Thank you," she said instead. Mrs. Olcott led her through the rooms, walls lined with children's drawings, shelves filled with supplies, laughter echoing faintly from the back. "You'll be teaching 3 sessions a week," the woman explained, "mostly kids and teens. But we also host open evenings for adults who want to learn." Leah nodded. "It sounds perfect." She spent the morning sorting brushes, arranging paints, and meeting a few students. For the first time in years, she felt useful, not surviving, not hiding, just herself. When she finished for the day, she stepped outside, her breath visible in the afternoon chill. Snowflakes melted against her coat. She checked her phone, half expecting a text saying he was running late. Instead, a familiar voice called out, "Leah." She turned. Evan stood across the street with the twins bundled in scarves and mittens, waving at her. The sight stopped her heart for a moment. He looked almost out of place there, the once polished CEO holding 2 tiny hands, a paper bag tucked under his arm. Maya ran up first, nearly slipping on the icy sidewalk. "Mommy, we brought lunch." Leah crouched, laughing softly as she steadied her daughter. "You did?" Caleb nodded proudly. "Daddy made sandwiches." Leah raised a brow. "Did he now?" Evan grinned. "Don't look so surprised." She smiled faintly. "I'm just cautious. You and sandwiches don't usually get along." They do now, he said. I practiced. They all sat together on a bench by the frozen fountain outside the center. Evan handed out sandwiches wrapped in wax paper and hot chocolate from a thermos. It wasn't perfect. One sandwich was a little burnt, and the chocolate too sweet, but it was real, and Leah couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed that freely. The twins chatted between bites, telling their father stories about cartoons and snowball fights. Evan listened closely, as if every word mattered. Leah watched him quietly, her hands warming around the cup. He caught her gaze and smiled. You're thinking too much. I always do, she said. Then, stop for a minute, he said softly. Just be here. Leah looked around, the twins laughing, the snow falling, the faint hum of city life. Maybe I am, she whispered. After lunch, they walked together through the park, the same one where everything had started. The bench where she'd once sat shivering stood half buried in snow now. Leah slowed down, her steps quieter. Evan noticed. You okay? She nodded. It's strange seeing it again. I used to think I'd never be able to walk past this spot without breaking. He looked at the bench, his voice low. It broke me too. That night changed everything. Leah's breath caught. I didn't know it changed you. He turned to her. It did. It was the first time I saw what my silence had done. You, sitting there with them. I've never forgotten that image. Leah looked down at her gloved hands. You don't talk like the man I used to know. Good, he said. That man didn't deserve you. She smiled faintly. You're getting better at saying what matters. I'm learning from you, he replied. The twins ran ahead, leaving small footprints in the snow. Evan and Leah followed slowly. You know, she said after a moment, for a long time I thought forgiveness meant pretending nothing happened. But I think I was wrong. He glanced at her. What changed your mind? Forgiveness isn't forgetting, she said. It's remembering without letting it destroy you. He nodded, his voice quiet. Then I hope one day you'll remember me that way. She looked at him for a long moment. Maybe I already do. They stopped walking. The park was nearly empty, quiet except for the twins' laughter echoing in the distance. Snowflakes clung to Leah's hair. Evan reached out, brushing one gently away. You've always looked beautiful in the snow, he said softly. Her heart stumbled, caught between surprise and memory. Evan, he pulled his hand back slowly. Sorry, I didn't mean to. She shook her head. No, it's okay. For a moment, they stood there, the silence saying more than words could. The past still existed between them, sharp, heavy, real, but it no longer defined them. Leah broke the quiet first. You know, I think I needed this job for more than money. I needed to feel like I could still create something that mattered. He smiled. And you are. That's what I always admired about you, Leah. You don't wait for life to hand you peace. You make it. She looked at him, the faintest warmth in her voice. You say things now like you've lived them. I have, he said, every day since I saw you again. The twins came running back, cheeks pink, eyes bright. Daddy! Mommy! Come see! They led them toward a small snowman they'd built, lopsided but perfect in its imperfection. Caleb's hands were red from the cold, Maya's nose running, but they were glowing with pride. Look, Maya said. He's smiling. Leah laughed, crouching down to fix the crooked scarf. He looks happy. Like us, Caleb said softly. Evan looked at his son, then at Leah. For a long second, no one spoke. Finally, Leah said quietly, maybe that's what healing looks like. Small things that make you feel whole again. He nodded. Then, we're on the right path. As they walked back to the car, Leah slipped her hand into her coat pocket and felt the note he'd left her last night. Thank you for letting me try again. She didn't pull it out, but the words stayed with her all the way home. When they reached the building, Evan opened her door, his hand brushing hers briefly. She looked at him, and this time she didn't pull away. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For today, she said. For showing up. He smiled. Get used to it. Leah met his eyes. Maybe the first will. As they stepped inside, the twins ran ahead, their laughter echoing up the hallway. Leah turned once, watching the snow fall against the city skyline. The same snow that once felt like sorrow now looked like renewal. And for the first time, she didn't feel like running from the future. She was walking straight into it, with him beside her, one quiet day at a time. The city lights shimmered through the tall windows that evening, soft gold against the blue-grey of winter. Leah sat by the couch with her sketchbook open on her lap. The twins had fallen asleep hours ago, their laughter now just an echo in her mind. The apartment was quiet, peaceful for once. Across the room, Evan sat at the table reviewing documents for the Haven project. He wasn't talking, wasn't trying to fill the silence. He simply worked, his presence calm and steady, a rhythm Leah found herself growing used to. For years, silence had meant abandonment. Tonight, it felt like comfort. She looked up from her sketchbook. "You've been sitting there for hours." He didn't glance up. "I know. I'm almost done. What are you working on now?" He smiled faintly. "Partnership contracts for the shelter and art wing. I want to make sure it's stable before I present it to the board." Leah studied him. "You're really doing it?" He looked up. "Doing what?" "Changing," she said softly. He set down the pen, meeting her eyes. "I told you I would." She smiled faintly. "Most people say that and disappear the next day. I'm not most people anymore." Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. "You've stopped talking like a man trying to win back his past." "That's because I'm not," he said. "I'm trying to build something new, with you and them in it." Leah's heart stirred, quiet but deep. She looked back at her sketchbook. "You keep saying things like that, and one day I might believe you." He smiled. "That's the plan." They fell silent again, but it wasn't empty. The air between them had changed, less cautious, more open. Leah sketched softly, the pencil moving almost on instinct. When she finished, she hesitated before turning it toward him. "Here." Evan crossed the room and sat beside her. On the page was a simple drawing, 4 hands overlapping, hers, his, and the twins. No faces, no background, just hands. "It's us," he said quietly. She nodded. "It's what we've become. Not perfect, not whole, but connected again." Evan studied the drawing for a long moment, then looked at her. "It's beautiful." Leah smiled faintly. "It's honest." He leaned back slightly, his voice soft. "You know, I used to think love was about doing grand things. Houses, trips, gifts. But now I think it's about this." "This?" she asked. He gestured around the room. Quiet nights. Shared space. Knowing the other person's there even when they don't say a word. Leah tilted her head, her tone gentle. "That's something you never understood before." "I didn't have to," he said. "You did all the quiet work for both of us." Her lips parted, but no words came. The truth in that sentence hit deep. He smiled faintly. "You built the foundation. I just broke it. Now, I'm trying to lay bricks beside you." She looked at him, eyes bright with unshed emotion. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he said, "but it's worth it." For a moment, neither looked away. The sound of the heater filled the space between their breaths. Finally, Leah spoke softly. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "You're quieter now, but I feel like I hear you more clearly than I ever did." He smiled. "That's because I'm finally speaking the right language." She raised an eyebrow. "And what language is that?" "Yours," he said. "Patience. Listening. Peace." Her laugh was soft but real. "You always had a way with words." "This time," he said gently, "I mean, everyone." She didn't reply right away. She turned her eyes toward the painting leaning against the wall, the one of the unfinished home. "I think I'll finish it tomorrow," she said. "You should," he said. "It already feels alive." She glanced at him again, her voice low. "Maybe that's because it finally has meaning." Evan's expression softened. "It always did. You just stopped believing in it for a while." "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe I stopped believing in myself too." He shook his head slowly. "You never lost her. You just got tired of being the only one holding everything up. Her throat tightened. You don't get to say that like you weren't the reason I had to. He met her gaze. I know. That's why I'm still here, to hold it with you now. Leah blinked back tears. You make it sound like healing is simple. It's not simple, he said softly. It's slow. It's showing up every day, even when it's uncomfortable. She nodded, her voice quieter now. And if I don't forgive you, I'll stay, he said. Because it's not about being forgiven, it's about being accountable. That silenced her. She looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time saw the man she'd hoped he would become years ago, steady, grounded, and unafraid to face what he broke. You've changed, she whispered. He smiled faintly. So have you. Leah stood and walked toward the window. Snow was falling again, coating the city in silver. She pressed her hand to the glass. I used to hate the snow, she said. Why? Because it reminded me of that night. And now? She turned slightly toward him. Now it reminds me that cold things can still be beautiful. He stood, walking closer, stopping a few feet behind her. You've always been stronger than you think. She smiled softly. You keep saying that, because it's true. Leah stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, Evan, why do you keep trying? Most people would have moved on. He exhaled, his voice steady. Because walking away once was enough to last me a lifetime. I'm done being a man who runs. Leah turned, meeting his gaze. And what are you now? He stepped closer, careful not to touch her. Someone who wants to earn back your peace. Her heart raced, but she didn't step back. You don't have to earn it. Peace isn't something you take, it's something you share. He smiled. Then share it with me. The words hung between them, quiet but powerful. Leah searched his face, looking for any trace of the old man she'd once feared. There was none. I don't know if I can yet, she said softly. That's okay, he replied. I'll wait. She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, You're different. He nodded. Because losing you taught me how to see. Leah turned back to the window, but her reflection in the glass showed a faint smile. Maybe this time I'll let myself believe that. Evan stood beside her, their shoulders almost touching. Neither moved, neither needed to. For the first time in years, they stood together, not as strangers, not as enemies, but as two people slowly learning how to love without fear. Outside, the snow continued to fall, erasing old footprints, leaving room for new ones. And for the first time, Leah didn't feel like she was standing alone in the storm. The morning sky was pale and bright over Chicago, streaked with soft winter light. The city buzzed quietly beneath it, but up in the penthouse, the air felt still. Leah stood by the mirror, smoothing her hair as the twins ran around the living room, trying to decide which coats matched their tiny scarves. Today was the opening ceremony for the Haven project. Evan had left early to prepare, but before he left, he'd said one thing, his voice low, steady, and certain. You're not coming as a guest, Leah. You're coming as the reason it exists. She hadn't replied then, too startled by the weight of his words. But now, looking at herself, she understood what he meant. This wasn't about charity or appearances. It was about acknowledgement, about truth. Mommy, Maya called, holding up a small red mitten. Does this match? Leah smiled softly. It's perfect, sweetheart. Caleb was next, tugging at her sleeve. Daddy said we're going somewhere special. Is it far? Not too far, Leah said, buttoning his coat. And yes, it's special. She took their hands, locked the door, and stepped into the elevator. Her heart was steady, but her palms were warm with nerves. For years, she'd learned to live quietly, unseen. Today felt like stepping into the light again. Outside, a black car waited. Evan stood beside it, dressed in a dark wool coat, his breath visible in the crisp air. He smiled when he saw them, slow, genuine, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. You look. He hesitated, searching for the right word. Peaceful. Leah raised an eyebrow. Not beautiful? He grinned. That too. She rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. You clean up well yourself. He looked down at the twins. You two ready to see something amazing? Maya nodded eagerly. Is it a park? Caleb guessed. A big building? Evan winked. Both, kind of. The drive was short. Snow still lined the streets, and sunlight bounced off the roofs of cars. When they pulled up, Leah's breath caught. The new center stood at the edge of downtown, across from the very park bench where her world had fallen apart. Now, where there had once been emptiness, stood something new, modern glass and warm wood, sunlight, spilling through tall windows, and a large sign above the doors that read, The Haven Project. Leah froze. Evan. He turned to her, voice quiet. Welcome home. Her eyes shimmered. You built it here? He nodded. I wanted to change the ending of that place. It shouldn't remind you of pain anymore. It should remind you of strength. She looked at the building again, her voice trembling. It's beautiful. He smiled softly. So are you. The twins tugged at her hands. Can we go see? Leah nodded, still dazed. Go on. They ran ahead, laughter echoing as they followed the staff into the building. Evan turned to her. There's something else you should see before the crowd arrives. Inside, the building smelled faintly of fresh paint and cedar. The lobby was open and bright, walls lined with framed art. Leah stopped in front of one of the pieces, a sketch she recognized instantly. Her own drawing. The one from her old sketchbook. The one she'd made years ago of the twins sleeping in her arms. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Evan. How? I found it when we packed your things for the move, he said. I thought it belonged here. It represents what this place stands for. Hope born from hardship. Leah turned toward him, her eyes glistening. You remembered everything. He smiled softly. I promised I would. Voices began to gather outside. The press, donors, volunteers, city officials. But inside that moment, it was just them. Leah whispered. This is more than I expected. I wanted you to see that pain doesn't have to stay pain, he said quietly. It can become purpose. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. And what about forgiveness? What does that become? Evan's voice softened. A home you never have to leave again. She didn't answer. Her throat was too tight. They stepped outside together as the ceremony began. Photographers snapped pictures, flashes reflecting off the snow. Evan's assistant handed him a microphone. He looked composed, confident, but when his eyes met Leah's, there was warmth behind the power. He began, his voice deep but calm. For years, I built things that made me feel successful, but they never made me feel whole. This project isn't about wealth, it's about redemption. It's about creating a place for anyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. He paused, scanning the crowd. Then his eyes found Leah again. I learned that strength doesn't come from never falling. It comes from standing up again, and sometimes from being reminded of who helped you rise. Leah felt tears sting her eyes. The twins clapped excitedly, unaware of the deeper meaning in his words. Evan continued, This place began as a promise to build something that mattered. But the truth is, it began much earlier. It began the night I saw someone. I loved most fighting to protect what I'd taken for granted. She taught me that love isn't about ownership. It's about presence, patience, and humility. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. The way he looked at her said everything. When the ribbon was cut, applause filled the air. Leah stood beside him, holding the twins' hands. Cameras flashed, but for once, she didn't care how she looked. The moment wasn't about spectacle. It was about truth, survival, and renewal. After the ceremony, they toured the inside together. Volunteers welcomed them, thanking Leah for her sketches, which now adorned the walls. In one room, the children's art corner, Maya gasped. Mommy, look, that's your picture. Leah turned and froze again. On the far wall, in simple, clear letters, a plaque read, Dedicated, to Leah Holt and her children, who remind us that love rebuilds. Her hand flew to her mouth. She turned to Evan, tears spilling freely now. You didn't. I did. he said softly. Because this wouldn't exist without you. She shook her head, overwhelmed. You didn't have to do this for me. I didn't, he said. I did it because you're the proof it's possible. Leah looked around the room, at the children painting, at the sunlight pouring in, at her twins smiling proudly. Then back at him. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll stay, he said quietly. Say you'll help me keep building this. For them, for others like you. Leah's eyes softened, her voice trembling. You don't need to ask. He smiled, relief flickering across his face. They walked together through the center as laughter and light filled the halls. Leah stopped by the window, looking out toward the old park bench across the street. It was still there, cold, silent, covered in snow. Evan stepped beside her. I thought about having it removed, he said quietly, but I decided to leave it. Why? She asked. Because it's part of the story, he said, a reminder of where hope began. Leah nodded slowly. Then it stays. Outside, children played in the snow, and volunteers handed out warm cocoa to families waiting in line. Inside, warmth bloomed in Leah's chest, quiet, steady, real. She turned to Evan, her voice gentle. You did something good, Evan. He looked at her. We did. For the first time in years, Leah believed that word. We. And as snow began to fall again outside the glass, the world felt a little softer. The past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined them. They had rewritten their ending, together. The evening air was cool but calm when they returned home. The twins were asleep in the back seat, their heads resting on each other's shoulders, soft breaths fogging the windows. Leah watched them through the mirror, her chest swelling with quiet peace. Evan drove in silence, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting near hers on the console. The radio played low, instrumental, slow, and warm. It felt like the world had slowed down just enough for them to breathe. When they reached the penthouse, Evan carried the twins to bed without a word. Leah followed behind, watching as he tucked them in, brushed Maya's hair from her forehead, and kissed Caleb's cheek. The small, tender gestures hit her harder than she expected. After closing the twins' door, she turned toward him. They adore you. He smiled faintly. They make it easy. You're getting good at this, she said softly. He chuckled. Don't say that too loud. I might start believing it. Leah smiled, but her eyes were full. You should. You've earned it. He looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. That means more than you think. They walked to the kitchen, the city lights flickering below. Evan opened a bottle of sparkling juice and poured 2 glasses. To today, he said quietly. Leah raised her glass. To beginnings. They clinked glasses gently, and the quiet that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, steady, familiar, and safe. Evan leaned against the counter, his voice lower now. I didn't know if you'd come today. Leah sipped her drink, eyes soft. I almost didn't. What changed your mind? The twins, she said simply. They were excited. I didn't want my fear to take that away from them. He nodded slowly. You've always been brave, even when you didn't feel it. She gave a faint laugh. Brave? No. I was just trying to survive. Survival is its own kind of bravery, he said. Her eyes met his. You've gotten good at saying things like that. I've had good reason to learn, he said softly. They fell quiet again. Outside, snow drifted past the windows, catching the orange glow of the streetlights. Leah set her glass down. You know, when I saw that building, the Haven Project, I didn't know how to feel. It was like seeing both my pain and my healing in one place. Evan nodded. That's what it was meant to be. I didn't want to erase the past, Leah. I wanted to honor it. She tilted her head slightly. You used to hate talking about the past. I used to hate being wrong, he said. That made her laugh softly. You've said that before, and I'll keep saying it, he replied, smiling. Leah walked toward the window, her reflection faint against the glass. You know what I thought when I saw the bench today? What? I thought about how small the world can be, how the same place that once broke me could be where I finally felt proud again. Evan stood beside her, close but not touching. That's what forgiveness does. It doesn't erase, it redefines. Leah's eyes glistened as she looked at him. You talk like someone who's lived every word. I have, he said. Every sleepless night since I left you taught me something. She studied his face, the lines of quiet exhaustion softened by peace. You don't look like the man who used to sit behind glass walls. He smiled faintly. That man didn't know what life was. She smiled back. And what about now? He said softly. I know life is sitting right here, beside me. Her breath caught. The words hit deep, too close to the heart. Evan, she began, but he raised a hand gently. You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for more than this moment. Leah turned back toward the window, watching the city move beneath them. You always had this way of saying too much with too little. Maybe I finally learned from you, he said, his tone low. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was charged, alive. Leah felt her heart thud, slow and unsure, but steady enough to remind her she was still capable of feeling. After a moment, she whispered, You know what I noticed today? What's that? When you spoke during the ceremony, you didn't talk about wealth, power, or business. You talked about people, about love. He smiled softly. That's what I learned from losing you. Leah's voice faltered slightly. You make it sound like I taught you something worth keeping. You did, he said. You taught me that love isn't loud. It's in the quiet things. The way you held them when I didn't show up. The way you kept going when everything fell apart. That's strength. And that's love. Her eyes shimmered, her voice barely above a whisper. You remember everything now, don't you? He nodded. Every detail, every mistake, every moment I should have fought harder. Leah turned to him. Then tell me, what do you remember most? Evan's eyes softened. The way you looked at me the day we first met. You didn't care who I was. You just smiled like you saw someone worth knowing. I've spent years trying to earn that look back. She didn't respond immediately. Her throat was tight. Her mind raced between past and present, between pain and peace. Then quietly she said, Maybe you're closer than you think. The words hung there, fragile and real. Evan didn't move, afraid to break the moment. Leah looked down, smiling faintly. It feels strange to be sitting here again. This place used to feel like a cage. I know, he said. That's why I changed everything. No meetings here, no business, just home. She nodded. It feels like it now. He studied her carefully. Leah, I know I can't rewrite what I did, but I want to build something new, with you, if you'll let me. She met his eyes, her voice quiet. You already started. Evan took a slow breath. Then maybe it's time I stop proving I've changed, and start showing you what love looks like when it's steady. Leah held his gaze for a long moment, searching. And what does that look like, Evan? He smiled gently. It looks like showing up, every single day. No excuses, no leaving. Her eyes filled. You think you can keep that promise? I've already kept it longer than I ever did before, he said softly. And I'm not stopping now. Leah's heart softened. For the first time, she didn't hear apology in his words. She heard commitment. She exhaled slowly. You always had a way of finding the right words. He shook his head. Not the right words, just honest ones. For a while they stood in silence again, side by side, watching snow fall over the city they both once called home in different ways. The lights reflected off the glass, bathing them in gold. Then Leah spoke quietly. Evan, do you believe people deserve second chances? He turned to her. Only if they know what to do with them. She smiled faintly. Then maybe you do. He didn't reach for her. He didn't need to. The way she said it was enough. When Leah turned toward her room, she paused at the hallway, glancing back. Good night, Evan. He nodded slowly. Good night, Leah. As she disappeared into the dim light of the hallway, Evan stood there for a long time, staring at the window. The reflection that looked back at him wasn't the man he used to be. It was someone new, humble, patient, present. In the quiet of that night, the world outside their walls moved on. But inside, Something had shifted. The distance between them was no longer built from pain. It was space waiting to be crossed. And for the first time in years, they both wanted to close it. Morning light broke gently over the city, spilling through the tall windows and painting the kitchen in soft gold. Leah stood barefoot, flipping pancakes while the smell of coffee drifted through the air. The twins sat at the table, swinging their legs and humming a tune they had made up on the drive home the night before. Evan walked in, still half-dressed for work. Shirt tucked in, tie loose, sleeves rolled. He paused for a moment at the sight of them. The simple scene, the sound of laughter, the smell of breakfast, Leah's quiet focus, felt like something he'd been chasing for years. "You're early," Leah said, glancing over her shoulder. He smiled. "Couldn't sleep." "Why not?" "I didn't want to miss this." Leah turned off the stove, raising an eyebrow. "Pancakes?" He shook his head. "Peace." She laughed softly. "You've gotten poetic lately." He grinned. "Blame you. You make ordinary things feel worth noticing." Leah set the plate down on the table and sat across from him. "Then notice the pancakes before they get cold." He chuckled, sitting beside the twins. Maya pushed the syrup toward him. "Daddy, I poured too much," she said, a guilty smile spreading across her face. Evan looked down at the small pool of syrup drowning her plate. "That's okay. You like things sweet." Leah smiled, just like her father. He looked up at her, the humor soft in his eyes. "Sweet or messy?" "Both," she said, her voice lighter than it had been in years. Breakfast passed with laughter. Evan told the twins a story about his first disastrous cooking attempt as a teenager. Burnt eggs, broken plates, smoke alarms. Leah couldn't stop smiling. It felt natural again, like something lost had quietly returned. When the twins left for school, Evan offered to drive them. Leah hesitated at first but agreed. Watching him help them zip their coats, tie their scarves, and carry their little backpacks filled her with quiet awe. He didn't move like a CEO anymore. He moved like a father. When he returned, Leah was cleaning the counter, humming softly. He leaned against the doorway. "You always hum when you're happy." She glanced over her shoulder. "I didn't realize I was—" "Then I'm glad you are," he said. Leah paused, looking down at the sink. "You know, I used to think happiness had to look big. Big moments, big gestures. But this—" she gestured around the kitchen. "This feels like peace." Evan nodded. Maybe peace was the big thing all along. We just didn't notice. She looked at him then, eyes softening. "You've changed, Evan. Completely." He smiled. "So have you. You don't look like someone carrying the world anymore." "I still carry things," she said quietly. "But now, I put some of them down." He stepped closer, cautious. "You don't have to carry any of them alone anymore." She met his gaze. "I know." Their silence stretched, calm and warm. That afternoon, Evan stayed home to work remotely. The twins came back from school with drawings of their family. Leah laughed when she saw them. 4 stick figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. Maya pointed proudly. "That's you and Daddy and us." Evan picked up the paper, smiling. "You even gave me hair." Caleb nodded seriously. "Because Mummy said you used to have more." Leah burst out laughing. Evan gave her a mock glare. "You're not helping my case." She grinned. "You'll survive." They all sat together on the floor, coloring and talking. Evan found himself lying on his stomach next to the twins, helping shade in a tree while Leah cleaned up crayons. Every few minutes, he'd glance at her, how she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her smile reached her eyes again. Later, when the twins went to nap, Leah found him still sitting on the rug, flipping through their drawings. She leaned on the doorway, watching quietly. "You're good with them," she said softly. He looked up. "I'm learning from the best." She smiled faintly. "They trust you now." "I know," he said. "That's the part that scares me most." "Why?" "Because it means I can't fail again," he said simply. Leah walked over, sitting beside him on the floor. "You won't," she said. "You already learned what happens when you do." He nodded slowly. "And I'll never forget it." They sat side by side for a long while, surrounded by crayons and half-finished sketches. The quiet between them didn't feel fragile anymore. It felt whole. Leah glanced at the clock. "You should eat something." Evan smiled. "You always take care of everyone else first. It's what mothers do." He turned toward her. "It's what you do. Not everyone loves like that." She blinked, her throat tightening. "You used to say love was a distraction." He nodded. "And I was wrong. It's the only thing that matters." Leah held his gaze for a long moment. Then, softly, she said, "You know, I think I'm starting to believe you again." His eyes warmed. "That's all I've wanted." They stood together, clearing the table. Evan rolled up his sleeves, washing the dishes while Leah dried them. It was such a small, domestic rhythm, so normal. But for both of them, it felt like something sacred. At one point, their hands brushed while passing a plate. Neither pulled away this time. Leah's voice was low. "You don't talk about business anymore." "I talk about life now," he said. "It's harder, but it feels real." She smiled faintly. "You always wanted everything to look perfect." He looked at her. "Now I just want it to feel right." Leah set the towel down. "And does it?" He nodded slowly. "For the first time in my life," her breath caught. "Evan." He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say it. I just want you to know, being here every day like this, it's enough." Leah stepped closer, close enough to feel his warmth. "It's strange," she said quietly. "For years I waited for an apology. But now, I don't think I need one." He frowned slightly. "Why not?" "Because you've been saying it without words," she said. "Every day through what you do. That means more than any sentence could." Evan's eyes glistened. "Then I'll keep saying it that way." She nodded, a small smile forming. "Good." The moment lingered, long and unbroken. For the first time, Leah didn't feel the need to guard her heart. The man standing in front of her wasn't the one who had left her behind. He was the one who came back and stayed. Later that evening, they all sat together on the couch, the twins curled up between them. The movie played softly, forgotten halfway through as sleep pulled the little ones under. Leah glanced at their small faces, then at Evan. "They're happy," she whispered. "They finally have what they deserve," he said quietly. Leah smiled faintly. "So do we." Evan turned his head toward her. "Do we?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." They sat there in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside. Snow fell again, quiet and steady, softening the noise of everything beyond those walls. Leah leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Not out of obligation, not by accident, by choice. Evan didn't move. He didn't speak. He just let her rest there, his heart steady beneath her touch. In that small, quiet moment, all the years of pain, distance, and regret seemed to fade. What remained was simple, human, and whole. For the first time in a long time, Leah wasn't afraid of tomorrow. And for Evan, tomorrow wasn't something to chase anymore. It was something to protect. The following weekend dawned bright and cold, the kind of Chicago morning, where breath turned to fog and the air smelled faintly of snow. Leah stood by the window, watching the light spill over the skyline. Behind her, the twins laughed as Evan helped them into their coats. "Where are we going again?" Maya asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Evan smiled, tying her scarf. "Somewhere special. Somewhere where everything began." Leah turned, her brows softening. "You mean the park?" He nodded. "It feels right to go back." She hesitated. That place had once been her lowest point, the night she sat shivering with her children, believing no one was coming. Now, years later, she wasn't sure how it would feel to stand there again. But when she saw the hope in the twins' faces, she nodded. "All right, let's go." They left the penthouse together, walking through the streets as snowflakes drifted lazily down. The city was quieter on weekends, wrapped in a hush that made every sound, laughter, footsteps, the rustle of coats, feel close and alive. When they reached the park, Leah stopped. The bench was still there, aged but steady. The trees around it were bare, the branches dressed in snow. She stared at it for a long moment, her breath catching. Caleb tugged at her hand. "Mummy? What's wrong?" Leah knelt down, smiling gently. "Nothing, baby. This place used to make me sad. But now it reminds me how far we've come." Evan stood behind them, his hands deep in his coat pockets. He looked at the bench too, remembering the night he saw her there. The fear in her eyes, the weight of her silence, the sound of rain on metal. He took a slow breath and said quietly, "That night changed me. I didn't know it then, but it did." Leah looked at him, her voice soft. "I used to hate this place." "I know," he said. "That's why I wanted to come back. Not to erase it, but to make it mean something new." She studied him for a moment. "You always find the right words." He smiled faintly. "Only when I mean them." The twins ran ahead, laughing, leaving tiny footprints in the snow. Maya turned and shouted, "Mummy! Daddy! Come sit!" Leah froze at the sound of those words. Mummy and Daddy spoken together so easily, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Evan stepped forward first, brushing the snow off the bench. He looked up at Leah. "Sit with me?" She hesitated, then nodded. The wood was cold beneath her, but the moment was warm. The twins climbed onto their laps, giggling as Evan wrapped his coat around all of them. "Remember this?" Leah whispered. He nodded. "Every detail. But today looks different." "It does," she said quietly. "That night, I thought everything was over." He looked at her, eyes steady. "It was the beginning." She turned toward him, their faces inches apart. "You really believe that?" "I do," he said softly, "because that night showed me who you were. Strong, brave, unstoppable. I didn't see it then, but I do now." Her eyes glistened. "You saw it too late." "Maybe," he said, "but I'm here now. And I'm not leaving again." The twins giggled between them, unaware of the weight of the moment. Leah brushed a curl from Maya's forehead, then looked back at Evan. "You've been showing up for months now, quietly, without asking for anything. That's what changed me." He swallowed hard. "I wasn't sure it would ever be enough." She shook her head. "It wasn't about being enough. It was about being real. And you finally are." Evan exhaled slowly, the cold air leaving his lungs in a white cloud. "Leah, I never stopped loving you. I just stopped deserving you for a while." Her heart clenched. "You can't rewrite what happened." "I know," he said softly, "but we can write what comes next." She looked at him, searching his face for the man she once loved, and finding him there, changed, gentler, grounded. Leah smiled faintly. "You sound like the man I hoped you'd become." He smiled back. "Then maybe I finally made it." They sat there for a while, watching the twins make snow angels in the clearing. The laughter, the wind, the quiet, all of it felt like the world had exhaled. Leah turned to him. "You know what forgiveness feels like?" He shook his head. "Tell me." "It feels like breathing again," she said softly. "Like you've been holding your breath for years, and finally, you don't have to anymore." Evan nodded slowly. Then, "I'm breathing with you." Leah laughed quietly. "That's a first." He grinned. "You make it easy." They fell silent again, both watching their children, both lost in the same thought, that somehow, after all the pain and years apart, they had found their way back to the same bench, but as different people. After a while, Leah said, "You know, I never imagined this. Not the building, not the peace, not this moment." "Me neither," he said. "I used to think redemption was something you earned with grand gestures. Now I know it's built in small, steady ones." She nodded. "You're right." Evan turned toward her, voice low. "So where do we go from here?" Leah looked out at the twins. "Forward," she said simply. He smiled. "Together." She met his eyes. Together. The snow fell thicker now, coating everything in quiet white. Evan took her hand gently, his thumb tracing slow circles over her glove. She didn't pull away this time. "You're freezing," he murmured. "Maybe a little." He smiled. "Then let's get you warm." As they stood, Leah glanced once more at the bench. I think I'm ready to stop remembering this place for the pain. Evan nodded. Then let's remember it for the promise. She tilted her head. Promise? He smiled softly. That no matter how cold life gets, love still finds a way to keep us warm. Her heart ached in the best way. That's poetic, he chuckled. You're rubbing off on me. They walked hand in hand toward the street, the twins running ahead, their laughter echoing through the air. Leah glanced back once, her gaze lingering on the bench. For the first time, she didn't feel haunted by it. She felt free. When they reached the car, Maya looked up at her parents and asked, Mommy, were you and Daddy friends before? Leah smiled softly. Yes, sweetheart. We were. Are you friends now? Caleb added. Leah looked at Evan. Their eyes met, steady, knowing. We're better than friends, she said. We're family. Evan's voice was quiet. Forever this time. As the car pulled away, Leah leaned her head against the window, watching the park fade into the distance. The snow fell harder, but it wasn't cold anymore. It was soft, alive, and full of light. Beside her, Evan reached for her hand again. Wordless, but sure. She let him hold it, and for the first time since everything fell apart, Leah realized she wasn't surviving anymore. She was living, not because life was perfect, but because love had finally learned how to stay. Before you go, take a moment to think about this story. Have you ever lost something that was once your whole world? Have you ever wondered if love can survive distance, pride, or time? Leah and Evan's story reminds us that love isn't proven by words. It's proven by presence. People change, not through grand promises, but through quiet consistency, through showing up when it matters most. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Tell us what forgiveness means to you. Hit the like button if you believe that second chances can heal what pride once destroyed. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where every story reminds you that redemption, love, and hope still exist. Because sometimes the hardest goodbye leads to the most beautiful return.